Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Deepest Lore. Today I'm smoking an H. Upmann Magnum 46, the black sheep of the Upmann line. How are you doing this week, Simon Roberts?
Good, very good indeed. I enjoyed yesterday's office hours. A bit of a trip down memory lane for me as well. You know, late night talk show radio. You know, the sort of preserve of long distance lorry drivers and angry pensioners.
And Roger from Bristol. Good morning. Good morning.
That was the thing. I saw that tweet. I love you love the characters. I used to listen to Nick Abbott on LBC on Friday night. He was very funny. He changed tack politically in 2012 because he used to be a bit sort of, I don't know, carelessly politically incorrect, let's say. You know, he would have a guy called Jonathan in Harrow who has a slightly foreign accent, and he would say, Jonathan from Harrow. make a thing out of it. And I mean, you know, but then he sort of turned after people pushed back on him for his critique of the London Olympics opening ceremony, right. Which he rightly did. But then he became ultra sort of liberal after that and a bit boring. But yeah, it's the characters that make it.
Evolution. I mean, I loved Ian Collins and the Creatures of the Night, Mike and Myth. You know, one of the things I always loved about Collins was his kind of geezerish turn of phrase. A wonderful coiner of little kind of geezerisms.
Yeah.
And he's still got a bit of that now, even now.
Exactly. He's not a Tory, as somebody suggested in the chat. He's definitely not a Tory. He's sort of quite London Metro liberal, but he'll pull the drawbridge up when he needs to.
Right.
Go on. When I was in my uni days, like early 2000s, I used to listen to what was his name? He was like a Jewish American guy, Charlie Wolf. I used to listen to him at like 3 a.m. on Talk Sport. You've never done him, have you?
I remember he came. I remember he came along. That was a kind of more of a shock jock style, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally playing it up. But he was quite good at it. I don't know why. Like sometimes I come back like drunk and just put that on instead of music. I think it's weird.
Thinking back on it as well, James Whale and Ian Collins and Mike Dickin, all of whom I used to listen to, if they throw the occasional kook on. Right now, I'm thinking back, Simon. It'd be like, oh, here's a bloke who thinks aliens are real. By the way, you know, let's fill up an hour. You know, they would indulge the kook on those shows, and I'm thinking back on it now. I'm wondering, like, why was that? Then? Do you remember it? Simon,
we lost Simon. You've gone silent. You're not on mute, but you've gone silent.
He's gone.
We can't do without Simon. We will have to.
They've taken him out.
Oh, we must have Simon
back.
Yeah, there's no Deepest Lore with no Simon.
No, help!
There we go. You're back.
You're back.
Sorry about that. I was just saying. I think you go into that kind of late night liminal zone where the as you say, the kooks come on. I mean, I used to listen to some of the American guys. There's a guy in America, they do a show Coast to Coast, Albert Nuri, and it's all kind of UFOs and, you know, stuff like that. And there was another bloke I used to listen to in that way as well. But yeah, they're sort of fun. You feel they can be a little bit more off the leash. I can imagine James Whale would just get people on though to slowly dismantle them in some slightly
Well, I mean, James
way.
Whale was big on the abrupt hang up, wasn't he? Just hang up.
Yeah.
You know, call them a name afterwards or whatever. Whereas Collins was more, you kind of indulge him a bit more. I'm wondering now, looking back, did they ever have David Icke on?
Oof.
I can imagine he might have gone on, you know.
Yeah.
There was a moment where Icke was more kind of like
available
in the media, and then he was cancelled at some point. So I don't know when that happened.
But You know, Ike makes a lot of money though, even in the quiet times. He sells a lot. Like his books sell for a lot, and he sells a lot of them. He's I think he's well off.
Yes,
But
well,
yeah,
it's big. It's kind of cult like the Ike
yeah.
phenomenon.
And I went to one of his talks once. It was 8 hours with a couple of breaks. 8 hours long at Brixton Academy, and it wasn't full, but Brixton Academy is pretty big. It was thousands of people watching at like 20, 25 quid, and that was years ago. And then just selling
Just to
books
play
on
the
the way
Brixton
out.
Academy is a big deal, I would say.
Yeah, that's a big venue. Yeah. Have you guys ever rung into these shows? Like, I can't remember if I've rung into Talk, but I've rung into LBC.
No.
I rang into Talk Sport in 1996 about sport.
Yeah.
And Paul Parker went to Derby County. I was explaining my weird thing of supporting a player rather than a club. Explaining that Paul Parker had gone to Derby from Manchester United. I was now a Derby County fan. And the presenter was like, "This is going to be a rather short-lived experiment." Said, I'm dedicated to the fortunes of Paul Parker, but I was so nervous when I was so nervous ringing up.
Wow.
When you kind of, I was properly nervous ringing in, and
Did you have to wait for a while before you spoke?
Somebody like that was the call in, or Mike Brazil, someone like that it was. Sorry, Horace.
Sorry, sometimes there's a bit of a cutout on the audio. I've rung into LBC. Did they make you wait? Like, were you on hold for sort of half?
Oh yeah, about 40 minutes, something. Yeah.
So that makes it more nervous, doesn't it? Sometimes, but sometimes it can help. But
you listen to the radio through the receiver, which is weird.
Yeah, and it's a bit different as well, isn't it? Like during the adverts, it tells you something like, "Oh, you're going to be on soon," or something. It's like they've got a different configuration. Anyway, the reason I mentioned it is just because how the person you're talking to handles like the line, like cutting it off basically or muting you, is the whole thing. That characterizes the whole experience, right? So when I rang into David Lammy, he's an idiot. Like he doesn't know when to cut you off. When I rang into Majid Nawaz, it was a completely different game. He's like, right, so James O'Brien is the master of it. He just lets you say half of what you want to say, talks over you, and then mutes you as if you're just flummoxed by it, as if you've got nothing, no comeback. It just sounds like he wins every argument. But what he does is he cuts the person off minutes before he says that he cut them off. And all they get is their initial sort of half-formed thought that was provoked by him insulting them. So he just knows exactly how to trap every single guest. Like, you cannot beat James O'Brien. And it's not because he's clever, he just mutes you. And Majid Nawaz was like that. He saw where I was going, he cut me off, he waffled, and then he just got rid of me.
I'm getting complaints from the chat that my sound is wrong. Is my sound wrong?
It was grumbling a bit and coming in and out, but it's fine now. It's all right.
Shut up, chat.
Yeah.
So whenever you listen to LBC and it's people calling in, just be aware that the person taking the calls is in complete control, and they know what they're doing, except David Lammy and probably the other dumb ones.
People want a compost update, Simon.
Temperature.
I've also got
really
sad news from my pickleballing. On Monday, I left my favourite hoodie at the gym from my Monday pickleball session.
But it's a high trust society, and it would have been returned to you.
Well, I'm hoping. I'm hoping it was returned. But we'll see. I have to wait with bated breath. I've had that hoodie for many years.
Some urban ute will be sporting that now in southwest London. There you go.
And on the compost front, I bought 2 pumpkins, chopped them up, put them in there. I managed to persuade the missus to give me her paper shredder, which she has now done. So I shredded up some paper in there. I bought the official hot bin bulk agent, they call it. I put a handful of that in, and I went down to the Yummy Mummy Cafe, Simon. And my years of low-level flirting with one of the baristas there, I cashed that in.
There you go.
I was like, I've got a favour to ask you. Face lit up.
Yeah.
Oh, what is it? I said, look, I've become obsessed with compost, but here's the problem. I'm stuck on 40 degrees. I need to get up to 60. Can you help me? She knew exactly what I was talking about. Went straight there, got me a got me a whole bag of coffee grounds, still hot. I put that in. I put the bulk agent in this morning. I re-kickstarted it. It's currently on 40 degrees. Now I have to wait. Now I wait. So exciting.
This feels impossible. This is 60 degrees is quite hot. I mean,
I know.
That's but it's good. It's good. They obviously they he's so sweet today. He came up and asked us for some coffee. He's been in for years. He loves the latte art, and now they feel they're helping you as well.
I know. I know. We even exchanged names.
Oh,
didn't ask enough. Didn't ask for a number though. Oh well.
Deeply personal.
So if you had a 60 Celsius bath, that would be like very hot, right? That'd be that'd be unbearable.
So the whole purpose of getting it up to 60, the whole reason I'm doing this at all, is because I would need to kill the weed seeds.
Yeah.
Right. So the weeds will still live and reproduce if I don't get it up to over 60. That's why it's imperative that it reaches 60. Otherwise, the whole experiment will be for naught. It's not actually about the compost; it's about killing the weed seeds.
Oh, I thought it was to start some sort of microbiota kind of reaction that would make better compost.
I still need the compost for plant pots and growing things and so on. But the main purpose is to kill the weed seeds. It's become a very expensive experiment, but I'm locked in now. I can't stop.
Don't people wee into compost or something to heat it up or something like that?
I mean, I will admit I have. Not directly. I've been using a vessel, but I've been I put some of that in as well.
Yeah,
and you didn't stop at stage 1 either, did you?
What did you mean? No. You only put the number 1s in. You don't put the number 2s in because it's poisonous. Unless it's cow manure or something like that, you can put that in. You know.
Incidentally, on the Talk TV analysis you did yesterday, I was just wanting to say there's one thing that really struck me, that it was obviously it's easy to get good content anyway out of LBC, and harder with Talk TV. And I think what struck me there was something. It's like a sort of Slavoj Zizek point, but I think what he would probably say is with Talk TV the ideology is hidden, and with LBC it's up front. You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought a commenter made a very good point. I should mention, by the way, that I also my interview with Peter McCormack dropped yesterday as well. So if you haven't seen that, you should probably check it out. But I had a good chat with him. It's playing the hits, but basically you do an outside appearance. You're playing the greatest hits. You know, it's Bowie in '87.
Is it a compilation album, do you think, or is it just like a live session that you collect, but you sort of you don't listen to it as much?
It's just Bowie rolling out the hits in '87.
Yeah, okay.
Glass Spider tour. But it's good. I don't know. We got into some interesting material, and I think Peter wanted to interrogate a little bit more than some appearances I've done. A little bit. So. I wouldn't say he pushed back much, but he was kind of inquisitive. He wanted to kind of explore different avenues. So hopefully my answers were not too waffly. Seemed all right looking back. I didn't like the light made it look like I had something on my face. I don't have anything on my face there, but the light makes it look like I've got something on the left-hand side of my face. I don't know. I don't really understand what that is. Also, in a studio thing there, watching back, I noticed there's a giant skull on the wall, like a skull and crossbones.
Wow.
I didn't notice that when I was there, like in person. But watching it back, I was like, "Oh, there's a giant skull on the wall." So that was kind of interesting.
He does have one of those typical modern podcast studios. It seems to be. Is it like lots of distressed brickwork, kind of dark, and there's a big table, and it looks like you're in a cellar of the Lubyanka being interrogated.
It's in Soho, basically. It's in some arty place in Soho, which is why last week I took that picture of the Angus Steakhouse. That's what I was there for, to do that interview. I just want to find, on the subject of LBC versus Talk TV. There was a really insightful comment on that stream, which I think I'm gonna pin it because it was that insightful. Let me see. Let me have a look. You two talk amongst yourselves a moment while I find this.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to. Have you been interviewed by the Russian Peter McCormack in the Lubyanka, Simon?
Not really. No, I would.
How
I
come
would
you
hesitate.
know?
I would hesitate. I think in the. I remember reading in the Lubyanka they have kind of like there was tiles all over the floors in the basement, and there's a sluice that goes out into the river, so you can kind of hose down the walls after you've
Fuck's sake.
popped a cap in someone.
I mean,
Not a
having
very nice
rooms
place.
specially for that. Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah.
A wet room.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
in Russian, it would be Piotr. It wouldn't be like McCormack. It'd be like, So I was just wondering how you were so familiar with the inside of the Lubyanka cells.
I learned a few crucial Russian phrases at school when in the 80s during the Cold War. I thought I'd learn some handy phrases in case the Russian paratroopers came descending from the sky. I learned how to say "I love the Soviet Union" in Russian. "Я люблю Советский Союз," and "Hello, comrade," "Здравствуйте, товарищ," and stuff
You
like
weren't
that.
joking.
No. I thought I'd better get on the right side when it drops and be prepared.
Is it Dobry dnia? Is that like good day to you?
I don't know what that means. I don't speak Russian. I just fake it for so I can try and save my life in the event of an invasion. So I think people thought Russian paratroopers were literally going to descend because of that film like Red Dawn, stuff like that.
I found the
skip
comment.
over
by
the
the way.
rest.
I found the
skip over
comment
it.
about Talk and LBC. The commenter is called Juice Boxable, and he says Talk TV is some sort of anti-content because the establishment doesn't want to talk about any real issues on the right. They have to keep you in this slop. Whereas LBC actually is content. Talk TV is going to be endless shows about why we aren't racist and why we love Israel.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite an insightful comment because, I mean, that grumpy old man show that I started to watch was just the worst shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And what you said on your stream yesterday is like that they know that it's shit and they think you lot love this, didn't you? You love this rubbish. That's their attitude towards their audience. Like The Sun, like The Mirror, it's written by really educated people, but it's put out insultingly. It's condescending that they put it out. Do you know what I mean?
There was like a 6-minute bit I watched with Jeremy Kyle and this Cockney ex-cop, right?
Bexley, yeah.
And it was entertaining because it's a Cockney geezer and Jeremy Kyle, but they didn't say anything. It was just entertaining because of the style of it. Do you know what I mean? There was no actual content. It's really weird.
Yeah, you have to watch a lot of Talk TV because I sort of use it as a kind of barometer for sort of median voter sentiment, and you have the kind of emotional sort of map of the day. You start with the kind of grumpy curmudgeon sort of character Mike Graham, the sort of fake, as you say, tell it to you like it is guy. Then you have the sort of Julia Hartley Brewer thing after him, and she kind of tries to kind of do a kind of rousing sentiment, but it just comes across as kind of menopausal irritability. And then you've got Ian Collins sort of in the afternoon, who's a bit more reasonable, a bit more blokey, bloke down the pub, a bit of banter. And then Jeremy Kyle, it goes back to kind of sort of manic kind of hysterical quality in the afternoon in the sort of drive slot.
Yeah.
And then you're exhausted.
If I just pull it up there, what's the emotional journey of the LBC then? We'll take the daytime crew, right?
Nick Ferrari will be the grumpy curmudgeon guy.
But then you're hit with James O'Brien right after that.
And that's the same kind of, you place that that's the kind of moral voice of the channel, I think, that you place in that kind of mid-morning slot.
Right.
That's when people's brains are supposed to be most active and most receptive, most productive at work. So you put your main channel messaging there.
There, Ian Collins is Sheila Fogarty. So it's hardly reasonable.
Yeah.
Hardly
No, it's not a good
sensible,
comparison
really.
at all. Yeah, I mean, she's a sort of Radio 4 runaway.
And then there, Jeremy Kyle is the LBC NPC Tom Swarbrick, who's an
Tom
absolute...
Smallbrick, yes. Yeah.
And then they go to Mari and Ian Dale.
Yeah.
And then, as if it wasn't bad enough, it's Ben Kentish after that.
Yeah,
Fucking hell.
yeah. They're much less showbiz than Talk TV. I mean, obviously, Talk TV is a Murdoch outlet, so it has that slightly one eye on the kind of.
But
Uh,
weirdly, LBC is a superior product, isn't it? It's just obviously a better product.
as you say, it's more kind of engageable in a way. The Talk TV stuff is kind of soporific. In that everything is sort of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, and we can all meet in the middle because the truth is probably there. That sort of sentiment.
Well, that's Collins, but it's not Mike Graham and Hartley Brewer. They're very biased.
Well, they are, yes. But that's them recentering the truth in their image.
One of the issues I have with Mike Graham is that he's just to me, he's not a relatable guy. I think he's meant to be like a mate down the pub type thing, but I don't get that at all. I just think he's a horrible, horrible prick, really.
Yeah.
Collins is much better at the bloke down the pub thing, I think. But,
Yeah. Graham is he's like your classic image of a red top tabloid journalist who sort of made his bones in the kind of 80s, 90s, and I called him once a porcine golf club bore, because that's what he is.
And what was Morgoth's classic name for him? The Jabba the Hutt blabbermouth.
Yeah.
But do you remember on Spitting Image, they always had the press as literal pigs?
Yeah.
And that was him, wasn't it? That was literally him in the 80s.
Wasn't he? He was big timing someone a year or two ago. Was it someone like Stephen Edgington or no? It was Connor Tomlinson or someone like that.
Yeah, he's massively big timing them.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I'm a big player. I've been in this business for years. You're a nobody. That kind of graceless kind of shittery.
Yeah. Oh, he's such awful.
The best thing we can hope for from Talk is that it renders Jeremy Kyle MP. I just think that would be so entertaining.
That's interesting that you saw that possibility there. Yeah.
Well, I think it's been touted. I think I think Kyle is,
because he was down at the Reform conference, wasn't he, the other week?
I think he's hovered running. Like when the actual election comes, I think they're going to stand him. They're going to stand Kyle.
Do you think they're cultivating a sort of little base of? Because I saw Matt Goodwin was toying with the idea of standing as well. So there's this kind of thing of people who are in between politics, academia, and entertainment, and then they're sort of maybe suggesting themselves.
I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Skinner runs as well.
Yeah, sort of insinuating themselves into the space.
You guys must have noticed that Tice and Farage are like even more pro-Israel than usual. Are they just turning it into? They are. They are just naked servants of Israel. The way,
yes,
at least in rhetoric, it's like they're not even. There's no constructive ambiguity or anything. It's just, it's horrible. It's like disgusting. They're already betraying our country. They're like 4 years from power.
Farage already said that he'd reverse the decision to recognise Palestine that Starmer has taken. So the most bizarre thing, though, right, is that if you read pro-Palestine accounts, they think Starmer is an awful Zionist. Whereas if you read the Tommy Sphere, Starmer is very often depicted wearing like a kind of Arab headdress as a jihadist. It's really weird. So both sides see Starmer as being on the other side, which is a testament to his political nous and panache in this delicate moment, because he's managed to.
He's bringing the nation together.
He's weird,
in a strange way.
He is more on the Zionist side. He's said in the past that just for family reasons and stuff, if nothing else, that was part of the reason why he helped force out Jeremy Corbyn, because it has to be a Zionist party. It has to be at least modestly Zionist, and that's what it was all about. But people attacking him, especially Jews attacking. I don't know. The left already obviously had a problem with him, because he is a Zionist. But Jews attacking him since last week, and other people attacking him sort of on behalf of Jews to sort of show they're on the same team as Jews who have been attacked and stuff. That's not sincere. Their attacks on him. They know that he's not pro-Palestine or pro-Hamas, or that he's endangering Jews in any way, other than in the way that he's endangering everyone. By importing those people.
It's a rhetorical strategy.
Yeah, it's just a demand. It's like, serve us more, swing more to our side. Like, it's
one of the reason I have not made a video yet today is because I hesitated on my choice of topic. I'll tell you the title of the topic, and then you can see why I've hesitated. My title was going to be Israel's invite to Tommy Robinson causes controversy in the British Jewish community. Because that has been a very interesting story to follow, because the framing from Tommy is basically that it's kind of these liberal, the liberal Jewish community, like George Soros type thing, like the ADL, etc., who are responsible. But when I was looking, one of the most vehement attacks has come from Melanie Phillips, who is probably as far conservative as you can go. It's like her and Peter Hitchens basically is the furthest right journalist in the country, pretty much. She was calling him all sorts of names and saying, "Yeah, you bring shame on. Like, this is absolutely nothing to do with us," type thing. Threw him under the bus. I thought it was just a very interesting little moment, and I was considering making a video on it, but I've hesitated sufficiently that I might not know. So,
because there's two different cleavages there, aren't there? There's who supports immigration, like, and they want to say that the Zionist ones are against it, which is false, and that the left are in favour of it, which is true. But there's also who specifically is favourable to Tommy Robinson, and that's a different cleavage. Like, you'd think Melanie Phillips would probably be at least not talk about it, at least not mention it or something. But no, she's like, she thinks it's absolutely awful.
Well, I think there is even an inter-Zionist cleavage, right?
There is.
Which is that the funder of Tommy, which is a man called Shillman, literally Shillman, Robert Shillman, right?
Oh, stop.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm not
writes
kidding
itself.
And Tommy Robinson is officially a Shillman Fellow as well. Like, he's got a Shillman Fellowship or something.
So this Shillman guy is very big on the anti-Islamic side, right? And so was, if you remember, David Horowitz, that guy.
Selling that to us, you mean?
Right. So Shillman is very, very big on the anti-Islam side. Whereas I get the impression that the likes of Larry Ellison or Bill Ackman or some of these other big name Zionists don't really appreciate that angle as much. It's just like support Israel type thing. Like, don't go for this divisive politics in the West type thing. Just kind of funnel resources, etc. So if you think Ellison backs Blair, Shillman backs Tommy, you know what I mean? So you can even see,
and they affect to be, like, they are ultimately on the same side. They're saying, right, you lot doing the counter jihad thing, you sell anti-Islam to the Goy, right? So, like, you sell that to the dunces, basically. But we don't want Islamic immigration into the West to stop, right? Like, none of them want that. None of them call for that ever. It's just stopping, let alone reversing.
I suspect
they say is endangering.
I suspect Shillman, because I mean, from what I've read about him, he's quite extreme on this topic. Shillman.
I mean, how hard is it just to put out one tweet saying let's send them back? Like, I've never seen any of them do that. Like that Pamela Geller, that Robert, what's his name? Any of them, any of these counter jihad people, none of them call for remigration. None. And it's
does Douglas Murray, out of interest?
Not that I've ever heard. I've never heard him ever call for any sort of solution whatsoever. He just tells us how bad things are. That's what he does. Tommy Robinson, same. But Tommy Robinson has used the phrase mass deportation is needed. He means Hamas supporters, but it is something. It's more than nothing, at least.
Right.
But all that counter jihad scene, including most of Tommy Robinson's followers, they can't bring them. They think remigration is a Nazi word and all this stuff.
But it doesn't. This is what I wanted to say, though, Horace. Right? It doesn't stop Melanie Phillips calling him a Nazi, because in her tweet she called him a neo-Nazi. That's his own. That's like friendly fire, as far as Tommy's concerned. So,
and it's wrong.
Why is that happening? Why is that happening? You know what I mean?
He's a leftist.
I think
Well,
you should
now
make
I'm
it.
on the centre left. I don't really have to worry about the interrighted.
But Tommy Robinson is on the centre left. Like he's so far from a neo-Nazi.
No, I won't. No. You cannot.
He's
Cannot.
with you on. He's with
No,
you
he's
under
not
Lord
with me.
Gasman's wings.
He's not with me. He would never support Tone as Viceroy of Gaza, for example. As I do.
He's even further to the left. Then Tommy's in the hard left now. Then because of you, you've pushed.
I mean, no. I mean, Tommy, these days, I mean, Tommy Robinson is finally permitted to go on trigonometry. I mean, this is the equivalent of AA will be down in Peckham, sitting around the table with Aaron and Ash very soon.
Can't wait.
I welcome that.
This will happen.
Incidentally, there's something been puzzling me about Bastani recently, which is his tacit support for the Greens. I saw him interviewing this posh bint, who's a bit of all right, actually. The green girl. Have you seen her? She's like a kind of like Big Sue's character from Peep Show.
Okay.
Have you seen who I'm on about? This.
I'll recognise the face probably when you.
Let me see if I can get a clip of her. Hold on a second. She was kind of doing the rounds.
Miriam Francois. It's not her.
I mean, she's mad as a hatter. Absolutely mad as a hatter. Let's see if I can find her a second. But I think in in a field which includes like Yvette Cooper and Lisa Nandy, she's all right. As far as looks go. Let's see if I can find her a second.
Look at Lisa Nandy every day brings a big smile, doesn't it? She's a radiant figure.
Come on.
Her dad was in the Running Mate Trust.
But so I was wondering, like, in this moment, why isn't he getting behind Corbyn and Sultana? Right? Why is he getting? Because it's weird. Like, this guy Polanski has turned up out of nowhere. Yes. And the Greens are having this big push now, and it's hard for me not to think that it's an astroturf to take any momentum away from Corbyn and Sultana.
They've made such a mess of it so far, haven't they?
And I actually DM'd him and said, Aaron, like, how come you go in for the Greens then? And is honest. I mean, I probably shouldn't tell you what his response was, but. He was like, look, I don't really like any of them really that much, but on the current kind of things, I'll just take anybody who doesn't have an insane foreign policy, and is reasonably left on economic issues. It didn't really explain why he hasn't gone for Corbyn and Sultana though, but I think the issue that he has with them is that they're too like woke. Bizarrely.
Well, this is the thing. Navarra are making this pivot back to class-based trad Marxist analysis because of the damage that woke has done.
But let's have a look at this girl, right? Because, I mean, this is why I'm centre-left, friends. I'm not sure if I could vote. I mean, I'd probably buy her a drink, but I'm not sure if I could vote for her. Have a little look at this girl here.
Be a day when we sit our grandchildren on our knees. And we
not enough to make me switch parties, I'll say that.
Our grandchildren of the kids that you're not going to have. Remember. But anyway, let's carry on.
First, they came for the immigrants.
Oh, God.
So we hung out flags from all the nations, and we said, refugees are welcome here.
This woman seems thick.
They filled our rivers with shit.
It's a weird line. Because it sounds like she's talking about the refugees.
Wow, like the Ganges or something. I can see the chat. The chat has got wood. The chat has got wood.
So we became friends of the river, brought the water back under public control, and we gave our rivers rights.
Okay.
That's insane.
Yeah.
This is billions.
But you know, like the Harry Enfield, saw you come in type thing.
Yeah,
she's got a bit of that about her. Kind of,
Remember Rothbard said, if animals want rights, let them petition for them. I want to hear I want to hear the rivers arguing their case. She's all right. She's got a bit of a David Coulthard jaw. Like,
it feels like it could be a new kind of hip party, because that's sort of a Steve Coogan talking point that she's taking on there about companies polluting waters. I mean, because he had a campaign about lakes being polluted, didn't he? Late last year or earlier this year.
What is interesting though,
it's a showbiz party,
is that the environmentalist talking points they were taking on were not carbon net zero based, but actually like pollution in rivers, which is a bit more old fashioned.
Small C conservative ecology.
Which I can see kind of where the attraction for Bastani may be coming, but I mean, she still sees completely mad. They're giving rivers rights and things like this,
If we're choosing between the Greens and Sultana Party, I'm going with Jez and Sultana. I prefer that. I think Zach Polanski is absolutely mad, and like with them, there's a chance Polanski we sort of turn out later to be a bit of a Zionist. I know he's probably not, but whereas Corbyn and Sultana, that they are actually going to be a problem for sort of the what we call it, the gay, the global homo agenda. They're more of a problem for that. I think Zach Polanski will basically go along with that.
I mean, the gambit with Polanski, I suppose, is that you could hide. You can't call him an anti-Semite because he's Jewish, whereas you can call Sultan. So maybe strategically, Bastani's thinking, well, if I just stick him in front of me, you can't accuse me of anything. Type thing. It's just about I don't know.
But he does have that, as a friend of mine says, he's arisen without trace quality.
Yeah, Aaron, I don't know. I'm very skeptical. It seems astroturfy to me. But...
Yeah,
Aaron, I know you're listening. I've been a Novara FM OG since about 2014. The channel was young when I started listening. I've been with you all the way. You and James, remember James Butler?
Yeah.
Anybody listening remember James Butler?
I used to listen to Novara in the Resonance FM days.
So me and you know this history, right?
I even used to listen to Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
I bet you also read like Open Democracy with Anthony Barnett.
Oh dear,
awful stuff.
Was Ash with them all the way back then? Was Ash Sakar with them back in 2014?
She's fairly early. Yeah, she's been on there 10 years or more. She's one of the earliest, but it was them two first with the radio show and the company. I think she was the next person they brought in, but there was also Laurie Penny and Eleanor Penny came in as well. That's not a good idea.
I still
Aaron, come on this show. If you want me to drop out because I slagged you off or whatever, I will. But let's start this left-right fusion thing. Well, sorry, it's centre-left with left. Anyway,
exactly, centre-left for us. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Left-right fusion.
Sounds
like a new
I'm
cuisine.
a gadflyer. Yeah. Sorry.
I honestly think that Aaron would get more stick for allying with a Blairite than he would with a right-winger.
Yeah.
He would
from his own crowd.
He would literally get forced out of his own company for coming on here, like with you. Even if I wasn't on here, you are a Nazi to them. Like I did wonder whether his support for the Greens has been decided by the company, because I imagine Novara is run sometimes like electorally. What stance are we taking on this? And I can imagine they voted.
Lean into his
Greens.
Persian tyrant phase.
I don't know. Like, he's interacted with us and doesn't seem to get that much pushback from his followers and so on. I mean, I've got a bit of Marxist cred for my platform of Grover Fur and my entertainment of more pins ideas on counter gangs and things like this. I mean, it's hard. I do wonder what they're actually doing. And I quote tweeted him and I said, look, the left they're all hysterical about Farage calling him a fascist and so on, but there's a four-way split between the Lib Dems, Labour, the Greens now, and the Sultana Corbyn party. This basically, when it's that, usually what happens is that when the election comes, all of the left are going to have to be forced to get behind one party, and it's going to be Labour. That's what's happened in France again and again. It's the Macron strategy, right? The centre left, the kind of centrist party or the centrist candidate then ends up getting the support of most of the left to hold against the quote unquote fascists. So I don't really know what they're doing, splitting at the moment.
At the last election, there was also Galloway's party as well, wasn't there? The Workers' Party of Great Britain. So there's actually 5. I mean, they might have collapsed now. I don't know, but they were forced. They
doing radio, just doing radio.
Right.
Again.
Oh, okay. They nearly won a couple of seats, didn't they? Came pretty close in a couple of places. But I think the left won't do that. They will just let their vote be split. They're poor at that. They're poor at sort of marshalling their own side into one force.
There is a thing actually that relates to the David Graeber book that Curtis is springboarding this documentary off. Actually, he says that one of these problems you have with this increasing bureaucratization of society is that the left doesn't have any critique of this bureaucratization. And he says in his book, the right does at least have a critique of bureaucracy, but he doesn't give it much credit. But the left has none, and so they are kind of paralyzed with an inability, and that's why this shift out of identity politics from the woke sort of angle at least needs to happen for them in order to have some sort of comeback.
I picked up all his books, by the way, Simon, because they look interesting. Right. I haven't started
Yeah.
reading them yet, but the missus was very interested by the Bullshit Jobs book, and has co-opted that, so I've already lost that one.
Yeah, I think that's it. Probably
they look interesting. All of them do. So
again, yeah, they just, some of their analysis is very resonant with us, and you can't easily dismiss it.
All right, so let's play the Shredder ad. 25% off all courses, and when I come back, we're going to be talking about Can't Get You Out of My Head, episode 1, second part of it, and hopefully we're going to find out about Mao's crazy wife. So that's why I've called the stream. Yep. It's promo code Shredder. World-class education denied to you by school, denied to you by woke university. Well, no more. Pick up your course today. 25% off all courses with promo code Shredder. That's Shredder. Buy it now. Yeah, pick up a course today. I should have mentioned that I still maintain that Bastani failed the Alex Ferguson test, because what he should have done is give Anash Sakar the hairdryer treatment, shipped her off to the Guardian or something, even though she's a star player for him. Get her out. You're not bigger than the club type thing. To really show that he was done with woke or whatever. But he's too loyal. He was too sentimental, basically.
He's got to learn. She's looking for the smack of firm government.
So any notes before we restart the talk, Simon, or shall we just go straight in?
Let's just plunge in.
Michael de Freitas was now working for a notorious landlord in Notting Hill called Peter Rackman. Rackman owned hundreds of flats in decaying houses in Notting Hill, which he rented out to prostitutes and immigrants. De Freitas' job was to be Rackman's enforcer, often using threats and violence, including breaking in and wrecking the flats.
When we come back in the night, we see everything outside. All the floor mash up, all the wardrobe, all the chair, all the table, all the clothes on the floor, dirty. He take my brother tools and mash up all the floor. He pull up all the light. No water. I say, well.
Michael de Freitas was fascinated by his new employer, because Peter Rackman was far more than just the brutal gangster that he was.
Is this like in real life Nicholas Rogue performance, Simon?
Nicholas Rogue, how do you mean?
It looks like the gangster from Performance.
Oh yes, of course. Well, yeah, very possibly. Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, just while we've paused, I would just a note: both of these men are of not Northwest European ancestry. I looked up a bit of Michael de Freitas, and his dad. I mean, de Freitas is a Sephardic name, I think. Like, people of that name in the Caribbean are almost certainly of Sephardic descent. Peter Rackman would have been a descendant of Eastern European Jewish immigrants from probably the late 19th century, as were so many influential characters in Curtis documentaries.
I think it's that what AA says there actually does prompt a bit of a rewatch of Performance to have a look at that, because Rackman certainly embodies that kind of. It's not the sort of slick London gangsterism. I mean, he's not kind of like a violent gangster in that sense. He had other people do that stuff. People like de Freitas, but there's a sort of real grubbiness kind of about Rackman.
I honestly love that mob boss in Performance. It's just his accent Just the
Oh,
way the way it's shot in that official end is so weird. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's really. I mean, Rackman's there's not that much known about him in many ways. He was very secretive. He used to like wear sort of because he was a bit of a short ass. He used to wear sort of shoes with lifts in and crocodile leather shoes. And apparently he used to have a bit of a thing about watching naked lady wrestlers. And he was germophobic. He had to have all of his cutlery sterilized each time. But he would he essentially borrowed some money. He bought in the 50s. He started buying up houses in the Harrow Road in that part of West London. The first one he bought was £2,500. And the main thing about Rackman is he essentially ended up turfing out the sort of white working classes who were living in these kinds of degraded properties. And what he would do is he'd buy one of these places, as he did here, and there were 8 rooms that had been subdivided. And in the one room that was left over, he moved in sort of 8 West Indian musicians, and he just told them to have parties all night, make as much noise and raise hell as much as they wanted to. So all the other tenants moved out within about 3 months.
Wow.
And then he would bring in more people from the Caribbean, and he'd make them pay more rent than the previous tenants. And then 18 months later, he'd sell it. He bought it for £2,500, and he sold it for about £12,000-13,000.
Dark.
So he never paid a penny of income tax, and he was never found guilty of anything illegal at all. He had about 400 to 500 buildings that he owned. That was about 100 mansion blocks in West London. I mean, absolutely millions, today. And he himself lived in just near Hampstead Heath in a house that was big enough. A garage was big enough to have 6 cars in it. So he did well. The estimates of what he left when he died were between £1 and £2 million. So £1 and £2 million in 1962 is about £25 million today. So he did pretty well.
Notting Hill sort of area, or a place like that, right?
Yeah, Notting Hill, Westbourne Grove. All the kind of West London suburbs that were down and out, like you see in Performance. Where Notting Hill was pretty run down at that time. It wasn't like £3-4 million houses as it is now.
Well, what's amazing is that Curtis is showing the enrichment coming in, and then immediately enriching the area with this sort of activity. I mean, it's kind of,
This guy, he must have. I assume he was, in contact with people in the Caribbean or on the boats or at the arrival points, right? Like,
not in particular. People came needing accommodation, and a lot of the. There's always a little bit of doubt about the cultural trope of, back in those days, there'd be signs in windows saying, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, that kind of stuff. There's an element of that being backed up by some people. There was a BBC Radio 4 documentary a few years ago. A chap called Joshua Levine did sort of interviews with various ex-tenants, people who knew Rackman. And there was a lady from the Caribbean who said, that was pretty commonplace, and they couldn't get anywhere to live, so they would go to Rackman because he would charge them over the odds. I mean, the problem is there's conflicting stories about Rackman. On the one hand, this chap is trying to kind of, at the beginning of this documentary, sort of trying to rehabilitate him, and there's people saying, oh, he was a jolly kindly man. But then there's other people saying he was just an absolutely, ruthless kind of landlord. I mean, he was the master of min-maxing houses, in terms of he would buy the house and then re-subdivide it again. And then he'd subdivide the basement as well. And this West Indian lady said something very interesting, that she went, Michael de Freitas, she was a friend of Michael de Freitas. She knew him and was introduced to Rackman and asked for a place. And Rackman said, are you using it for business? And she said, I was young and stupid. I didn't know what he meant. And obviously the business he meant was, are you going to go into prostitution? Because essentially he was happy to, de Freitas was pimping women, and Rackman was kind of hosting them, but he was charging them a premium. I mean, something like £2 a week, which was a lot of money back then. People might be earning £6-7 a week for places to, essentially act as, houses of prostitution.
Reading his Wikipedia page, he's been immortalized in popular culture. It says here the artist Sheriff Fat Man. Oh, sorry, the song Sheriff Fat Man by Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Which was a 1989 single. It says rails against slum landlords and their intimidatory tactics used against tenants. And it mentions Rackman in the lyrics. It says, there's bats in the belfry, the windows are jammed, the toilets ain't healthy, you don't give a damn, just chuckles and smiles, laughs like a madman, a born-again Rackman, here comes Sheriff Fatman. And also Genesis allude to him in the song Get 'Em Out by Friday from 1972. So he was known about in the culture.
Yeah. He was. I mean, Rackmanism as slum landlordism. I think there was an MP called Ben Parkin who labelled him with that, and he was seen to be representative of the iniquities of the age. And one of the things in this documentary that was interesting was this. I think it was a Jewish writer. He was talking to his doctor, who was a Jewish doctor, about Rackman once, and the doctor had a very strong reaction, basically, which suggested he was saying, he gave our people a bad name, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because he was behaving in this archetypally terrible way. He was also a familiar of. He had mistresses. He was married, but he had mistresses, including Christine Keeler and Mandy Rice Davies of the Profumo affair. Mandy Rice Davies, when she was 18, and he said Rackman gave her a mink coat, 3 mink jackets, a Persian lamb jacket, 3 diamond brooches, 2 pairs of diamond and ruby earrings, a big gold diamond and ruby watch, 2 diamond rings, and a Jaguar. And for her 18th birthday, he gave her about £1,000 in cash, which is about 30 grand in today's money. So he was dropping the bling on these ladies, and he kept them in flats in nice bits of London.
All right, I'm thinking Mandy Rice Davies went on to become like a hoster of parties that connected all sorts of people. Was that her? Maybe I'm mixing her up with someone else.
Could
but
be.
She was one of the people. Oh, okay. I'm not surprised. Yeah, like because that scene, I don't know. But there seems to be a lot of interesting sort of ferment around West London, like who meets who and stuff. It's no surprise to hear that he was involved with that Keeler scene, which was sort of crossing over with spies as well, like Soviet spies and stuff, wasn't it?
That's it. That was it. It was one of the attachés at the embassy who had slept with Christine Keeler, and then obviously she'd slept with John Profumo, the Minister for War. So there was an implicit security risk.
I'm interested to hear how much like this guy's effect on that part of London led to also the Notting Hill Carnival, which is kind of, for people who live around there, something of a nightmare. They board up their houses when they go away for the week when the Notting Hill Carnival's going to be on. I mean, that is just to carry. It's like a stamping your identity on the area thing, isn't it? There's no particular reason to have a Caribbean Carnival there other than that they wanted to assert their presence. In this otherwise very white and salubrious area.
There was an element of Rackman that does resonate with, you sort of hear these stories now about areas that are becoming rapidly Islamified in English towns where, the parking jihad that Gavin Bobby talks about, where, there's intentional targeted disruption. Well, Rackman, he would hire men to come in and sort of urinate in the hallways of buildings, just smash up the furniture.
This guy is.
This is the funniest one. He was so ruthless. There was some tenants he wanted to move out. He removed the roof of the house.
Bloody hell!
So they would go.
I was about to compare him to the Penguin from Batman, but I reckon the Penguin wouldn't. Some of that stuff's a bit rough even for the Penguin.
He'd have a bit of class. Yeah.
I looked up his surname. It means merciful or compassionate.
So, irony lives. But yeah.
Lovely.
Portrayed as. He had lived an extraordinary life. He had been born in Lvov, on the border of Ukraine and Poland. Then the Nazis invaded, and Rackman was arrested and forcibly sterilized because he was Jewish. But he managed to escape. He fled into Russia, but was captured again, this time by the Russians, who sent him to the labor camps in Siberia.
See, what's pretty disturbing is that if you have a look at the materials that were produced by the people who did that, the mid-century Germans, they talk about all this sort of stuff. It's all like that they were obsessed with the idea that like prostitution, pimpery, like like their propaganda,
tavern keeping as well.
Yeah, their propaganda is full of this sort of stuff. And now we're seeing this guy who was like escaped from Poland, and then immediately does this. From what I see, it's quite remarkable. But anyway, let's carry on.
I don't know if you've ever read Andrew Joyce's stuff on the pogroms that obviously has sort of sparked the westward migration from the 1880s and so on. But like there was these familiar complaints, that seem that it's like you've heard them before, even though you're reading it for the first time. And like what you said, like pimping, prostitution, like terrible landlordism, like predatory landlordism. Also tavern keeping, where they get people in debt and then acquire their homes. That was another thing.
Well, when I was kind of, because when I read these claims, obviously I was skeptical. I was like, right, well, I'm going to fact check all of this. I'm going to look it all up, and then I was shocked to discover that there's a whole like body of academic literature that kind of like celebrates this. It's like it's kind of like through the angle of like in a repressed society, like think of the brave girls who acted as prostitutes and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, this is a weird literature, but it's all there. It's just kind of spun the opposite way round. In fact, there's a whole documentary on Weimar, which kind of does this, which kind of celebrates the Berlin of this era and what was going on from like the opposite direction. So it's.
I've seen that documentary where there's chirpy music playing while they're describing child prostitution in Berlin. And it's like it's a happy tone. It's
a weird, because like some of the claims are just ridiculous. Like some of the claims, I was like, that can't be true. That must be just made up. They claimed like of so many different prostitution cases. Like 97% were controlled by like this one, and I was like, that's not true. And then I was looking it up, and I'm like, oh, hold on a second, here is literally an academic paper celebrating this fact, written in the year 2003 from a kind of woke angle, or from a progressive angle. It's very unusual indeed.
But that's the thing, isn't it? There's always the progressive angle where criminality becomes an act of resistance.
It's emancipatory in some way.
Yes.
But I can't. I mean, surely this Rackman chap is not emancipatory at all. He's just
he was involved with the Cray twins. He would buy properties for them, and the famous nightclub that they had, Esmeralda's Barn, was one of his, where all the celebs like Babs Windsor would come and hang out with the Crays.
Right.
The Crays are of unknown ancestry themselves, aren't they? This is like nobody seems to know. Like they were sort of a bit mixed, like a bit gypsy, maybe a bit something else, Maltese, maybe Jewish. So I don't know if there was some link there, but they were obviously.
But they're kind of romanticized, aren't they?
And they were trying to muscle in on Rackman as well. So no honor among thieves.
They were trying to muscle in on his
property empire. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They would offer protection rackets for him, of course, and once you're in that, you'll get tied into a loop where eventually you won't be able to pay the debts, and they'll take your houses. So,
about what you got about what you guys said about about like criminality being sort of celebrated. Novara are terrible for that. It's one of the things that stopped me listening to Novara. They started putting out like frequent podcasts, just advocating for criminals, plain and simple. Just empty the prisons, literally. They literally believe in just emptying all the prisons.
I'm wondering if part of that is Marxist strategy, though, because as I was reading in that book, What is a Counter Gang, Marx has this idea of the lumpen proletariat, scumbags, basically, lowlifes, thieves, vagabonds, and so on. And Marx had a very low opinion of these, but they can be used as thugs for various different power groups. And I wonder if there's a certain strain of Marxist thought. I'm not accusing Bastani of this, but maybe one of the reasons why they like open the prisons is because they think they can use them as lumpen proletariat for the struggle.
That makes sense to me. And Matyas Rákosi's regime in Hungary, like the communists installed at the end of the Second World War, to drive people off their land, to force them onto collective farms and so on, collective properties. they literally just employed gangs of gypsies who were already like hardened criminals, and they just sent them to literally just terrorize, bully, and force people out of their homes all over Hungary. It's like just a living example of that, you know. Like, yeah, we need these people to stop living in their own farms. So,
but it's important to understand that the lumpen proles are never seen as anything more than a low-level thug. They're not really part of the struggle. They're just muscle to be used.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's carry on.
Where he watched people survive by killing each other and then eating the human flesh. But then the Nazis invaded Russia, and suddenly Rachman became Russia's ally. He was sent off to fight with the Free Polish Army. And he ended up, after the war, in London, stateless and a complete outsider.
Pause, please.
Go on.
He ended up in London. What do you mean? Like he's fighting for the Polish, the
Liberation
Polish
Army.
Yeah, so Soviet-appointed forces, I guess, right? In Poland, and then he ends the war in London. What on earth do you mean? And also, just the way that Curtis just faithfully retells his story as though it's true. You know, just all of that is just what was it he said? He was forced to. I don't know. It's just something like. It's just a ridiculous story. Obviously, Rachman has just told you the bits that he wants, but Curtis just takes that as all real, you know? Just takes that all as read. I just think that's daft.
Horror meant that Rachman judged nobody. For him, the differences between right and wrong were luxuries for the privileged. In the face of horror, everyone was the same, focused entirely on survival. But the English judged him. He was hated with an overwhelming disgust.
Yeah, as anybody would think of a criminal gangster slum landlord who engages in. I mean, how dare they judge him morally? Fucking hell.
Just set in their ways.
Come on, Curtis.
As the face of evil. De Freitas believed that this revealed something that was hidden in English society.
A dislike of pimps, slumland. I mean, De Freitas. Yeah, I'm literally a criminal, and this stuffy establishment doesn't like that. How dare they? What?
This is what critical theory is all about. I'm guessing Michael De Freitas was taught a bit of critical theory, more or less, right? Which is like you just talk about the discourse around something, you know. You do not talk about what's being done, any crimes or wrongs or anything. You just talk about the discourse around it, meaning the discourse from, white people, basically. It's fucking ludicrous, but this is how it's just all that matters is your prejudice. That's the whole topic.
Now, let's talk about Curtis a second, because the way he set this up surely engenders this reaction. What's he up to, Simon?
It could do.
Any normal person watching this is going to have the same reaction as the three of us.
It'll sort of be revealed. He'll work his way towards. De Freitas wrote a book, or rather, it was probably ghostwritten for him by an English journalist called John Stevenson, where De Freitas sort of conceives of this notion of a kind of English exceptionalism, which he calls Englishism, which is connected with a kind of deep melancholy at the loss of empire, not just reflexive xenophobia. So there's this kind of yes, there are sort of, if you like, racially charged reactions to immigration, but the actual problem is a sort of a deeper, psychological complex that I think he's trying to reveal here. So the idea of Rachman as he was, I mean, at the time, it is sensationalized, this Panorama program from 1963 after he died with Richard Dimbleby, David Dimbleby's father, does sort of go to town on him to some extent. In the intervening years, as I say, people have tried to sort of do a bit of a rehabilitation on Rachman to some extent, but the problem is the evidence kind of isn't really there. It falls into cheap tropes like, he was the jolly fat man, and he was very nice, he was very generous to immigrants. And a lot of the immigrants interviewed were sort of grateful because they just couldn't get anywhere else to live. But he absolutely bled them. So, difficult to know. I
mean, that is a crucial fact, though. Like he specifically was enabling them to move into London.
A lot of people, by the way, are asking what's the name of that Weimar documentary. I want to say it was called Sin City, but I could be wrong.
It was on YouTube. I'll have a look for it.
I think it was called Sin City. I could be wrong though. It was a little bit of it was like a 2000s doc. It was quite a. It wasn't a recent one. It was kind of like about 10, 15, 20 years ago, something like that. Pretty sure it was called Sin City. I could be wrong. All right, let's see what De Freitas has to say.
We start with the story of a man. Let me say straight away, a sordid story that some of you may well not want the younger children to hear. This is Peter Rackman, one of Britain's big-time 20th century racketeers.
On the surface, there was the overt racism against the immigrants that Rackman was bringing into Notting Hill.
A large number of people of Notting Hill are trying to mix the two races, are trying to bring about a coffee-coloured mulatto population in Britain. Then I regard it as no disgrace with the White Defence League to come on the scene and stand up for white interests.
Pause. I don't know if you know a bit about that guy. That's Colin Jordan, who formed this organisation, the White Defence League, which later eventually span into the British National Party.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So there was a BBC drama about him a few years ago called Ridley Road. It might be on the iPlayer if you want to have a look.
But you see, I mean, the way Curtis has done this is weird though, because he has presented all the information up front. Gangster comes in deliberately, this guy De Freitas, his job was literally going in, wrecking flats who wouldn't pay their extortion money. Clearly, this is not making the area better. And now he's getting himself in a position where he's trying to defend this. It's a very odd rhetorical strategy from Curtis, I have to say.
Well, and this is some of the stuff that kind of felt very provoking to me when I first saw this. I mean, I haven't watched this since it came out in 2021. It seemed like he was going in with a thesis of racialized hate in the English in a very acute kind of way, and he'll make assertions about what the nice middle class people were worried about at the time, and we'll come to that in a minute anyway.
But De Freitas saw something deeper. Rackman's property empire was a brutal and violent one.
So therefore it shouldn't be defended? Let's see where Curtis is going.
But it was doing something that polite English society completely refused to do. He was giving people on the very margins of society, prostitutes and black immigrants, somewhere to live.
Oh, what an angel! Fucking hell!
Like
That's his.
This is on the level of Walter Box defending the undefendable.
That's his wife Audrey there, who was really absolutely dedicated to him, who he would carry on having affairs with all these other girls while he was married to her.
I just like Curtis stated it so plainly that it's like, right, are you saying that that's a bad reaction, Adam? Like, it's like, yeah, we didn't want, like, generally the British population didn't want a massive alien element to move in, obviously.
Yeah. I think he trades on that in a short while. He'll talk about how the nice middle class people didn't want to be thought of as racist. But when you look at surveys from the time, I mean, a bit later on, when you look towards 1968, when Enoch Powell makes the famous speech, the Gallup polls from the time showed roughly 75% of people were sympathetic with his views, including middle class respondents. So I think Curtis is on slightly shaky ground when he then talks about the idea that there was, in a sense, he's kind of projecting a sort of a modern liberal London middle class, where that didn't kind of exist in the same way back in the 60s, with a kind of set of right-on attitudes, which very much seem to be more of a cultivated product of the sort of academic revolution of the 70s, and then the sort of lifestyle revolution of the 80s.
And the race relations industry partly existed specifically to overcome Enoch Powell and what he represented. They were aware that there would be some resistance, and this was a way of undermining it, right?
Yeah.
But I like what you cited, that Enoch Powell's speech was received, that's sort of I've seen at least 2/3, maybe 3/4, maybe more of the country strongly agreed with Powell.
Yeah,
and
it was very unapologetic support. It wasn't sort of timid in the way that it sort of comes across nowadays. That was a Gallup poll. There was a British Social Attitude Survey data from the mid-60s. More than 60% of if you like, native Britons said they agreed with the question: whites have a right to keep blacks out of their neighbourhoods.
So that's clear, strong stuff. That's not just like dancing around the question either. That's like basically, keeping them out. That's
normalized.
And in my experience, if you cite that to people now, they either just don't reply, say on Twitter or whatever. They just don't reply, or they, in a few cases, they'll frankly say, it just had to be forced on people, and that's a good thing. There are people who will openly say that.
James O'Brien literally said that
a
week or so ago. I made a video about it.
And there's this deal of confliction about Powell again. I mean, when Nick Dixon and I reviewed him as well, and you could see how capable, interesting, and charismatic, and how Powell was, and yet there's still this kind of sort of nibbling away at him. I saw there was a clip going around Twitter earlier, Dominic Sandbrook on the Rest Is History podcast, talking about how Powell resisted the immigration of Ugandan Asians. And we would have had no Priti Patel, if that was the case. But in some of the sources I've been looking at as well, this documentary on Rachman that was on Radio 4, people were saying, well, actually, Powell was to a certain extent soliciting for immigrant migration, inward migration to the UK, just simply as a kind of job filling exercise at some level, probably largely, in the cities. I'm not saying I don't know to what degree Powell was emphatic about that, but again, I don't think it. I think this reduction of Powell to the kind of ultimate xenophobe is a false and misleading one.
He was still a Tory. He only turned against immigration, I think, at the time of the Second Race Relations Act in '68. That's 20 years after Windrush. In the same way that he only turned against the Common Market and the EC in the late '60s, I think. Like before that, he was strongly in favour of it. Wrote papers in favour of it. And other things like his right wingness is exaggerated often.
Don't forget that the key parts of that speech are quotations from his constituents.
Of course,
I do agree that his racism is overstated by James O'Brien.
They did, and then leftists do the same thing with that. They sometimes try and deny those poll results, and likewise they try and deny that Powell was reporting other people's words. They just say, "Oh, they just made all that up," just to put it in other people's mouths, but. I think
and Curtis does this thing, as I say, he goes on, he'll use modern terms like people concerned about being racist at the time. Well, racism wasn't really in currency so much. When you look at the sort of the public or the media discourse of the time, people like the Times would talk about immigration with terms like racial tension. They wouldn't use the word racism as such. It wasn't, again, racialism was around as well as an idea of the difference and separation of races.
This is something Peter Hitchens talks about, the difference between racism and racialism.
Yeah.
What do you think of the Hitchens line on Powell, by the way? Because what Peter Hitchens says in his books is, look, Powell killed the anti-immigration argument for 20, 30 straight years, made it almost impossible for someone like him to have because of the impact of that speech and what happened afterwards. What do you make of that argument from Peter Hitchens? Like how, or it seems like it's moot now, but that was what he was arguing, like in 1999, as an example, in Abolition of Britain. Any thoughts on the Hitchens line?
Well, I suspect the triangulation of the reaction to Powell, insofar as that was done, whether it was by political or media discourse, was probably a great part of that.
Yeah, like the reaction killed off. Yeah, like it's not
the way that is dramatized to the public, so to speak.
Yeah, and leading all of it.
To be fair to him, is still anti-immigration. He's just saying like Powell practically made it impossible.
Yeah.
To talk about
not Powell, William Rees-Mogg, Edward Heath, and the race relations industry did that.
Yeah,
I emphasise William Rees-Mogg because it was his editorial in the Times that was most ferociously demanding that Powell be fired and calling him evil.
And again, I will not to defend Peter Hitchens too much, but he does call out William Rees-Mogg a lot in his books. I learned about William Rees-Mogg and his malign influence through Hitchens. So yeah, I mean, he's aware of all of that, but he's trying to. I mean, I see him as somebody occupying the right, like struggling to keep his spot, make the argument, and also deal with the absolute shit that's going to be flung his way. Like, oh, you're just like Enoch Powell and all the rest of it, type thing. You know, in Blair's Britain in 1999, for example, trying to make that argument. You can see where he's coming from. Sorry, Simon, go on.
I was going to say, do you think Hitchens had any issue with Powell's style, in quotes? You know, that, well, if he'd only done it differently, or if he'd not made that speech in those terms, so to speak, and given a kind of hostage to fortune to the other side, do you think Hitchens has any kind of quibbles with Powell as an operator that made that spiked that issue?
Yeah, so it's hard to say though, because a lot of Hitchens' arguments seem to be like short-term tactical. You know, like but on other occasions, he does always have the grain of a good point, right? So during Zero Seats, if you remember, we were all wanted to destroy the Tory party. He's like, it's too late, and also you can't trust Nige. Now here we are, and we can't trust Nige. So it's hard to.
There was no pro-Nigelness about Zero Seats. That's not how it works.
Yeah, but the practical effect of it is that it's put Nigel in the driving seat, isn't it?
Well, that's not our fault. Like, that's the same as saying that Brett voting to leave the EU caused the boat to say.
But his point is, the problem we have with Hitchens is his points have a certain durability about them, even if the kind of the
one time I go against Hitchens, and he's right.
He's done good. Like the Cameron Delusion was a good book. That's a genuinely good critique of the Tory party and stuff. But he just shat himself at that election, and he was just plain wrong. Like he just did what Brand did in 2015. Remember, like after years of going, don't vote, don't engage in politics, and then suddenly, a few days out from the election, he just panicked and got Ed Miliband on and said, "Yeah, no, vote for Labour." That's Peter Hitchens. Like
I very much agree. The sensibility reads terribly, but I think as is one of the kind of eternal lessons of this channel is as you get older, you learn that there are people you don't like who may say things that they're still correct.
I mean, I'm saying this to someone who's accused of being a new Peter Hitchens on a daily basis. So,
yeah.
Hitchens has got a personality where it's important to him to piss people off and be a dick. Like, you guys aren't like that. I don't think.
No, I think there is a kind of a belligerence that he has, you know, and the guy, that Tony Lapidus guy who does impressions of him, kind of captures the sort of curmudgeonliness aspect of him, is wanting to find fault.
Affected as well.
Yeah.
It's over.
But you know, there's always that haunting thought at the back of the mind that, you know, Hitchens is going to be proved right again about something. You know, it could be stop clock, you know, twice a day, but you know. I
disagree. I think he's always wrong.
I noticed, for example, that David Starkey was against Zero Seats and against reform and Farage, and now it's kind of coming out that he's kind of helping.
He's still a Tory, though. Yeah, he's still a Tory member, though. He's still just every few days he puts up a new speech to a Tory party here and there. He's still a loyal Tory.
Something's happening there. I wonder about that. All right, let's carry on.
Shone a harsh light on the hypocrisy of the nice people at the top of English society who would never think of themselves.
Oh, we should mention, by the way, that he's a regular on the Flats Sloppy Pig Mike Graham show, and I just can't. Like, how is Hitchens mates with Graham? What a scumbag Graham is. I mean, how can you stay mates with him?
And Graham sucked up to him, basically.
Honestly, I prefer Owen Jones to Mike Graham. Honestly, I really do. And Hitchens is mates with Owen Jones too, weirdly. So, and with Bastani.
As racist, but wanted nothing to do with the people he was moving into Notting Hill. And they hated him for it. This was captured in an interview that the BBC did with the local upmarket journalists in Notting Hill.
Pause.
About the day.
Just keep your eye on the woman in this clip that's coming up. Just her reaction, because he does a little bit of an impersonation, and it's obvious that he's kind of doing it in the office every day and making her giggle. I tried to find out who this guy was, this editor of Kensington News. I couldn't track him down because I thought he was just quite funny, and he's quite out there with his criticism.
Rachman visited their offices.
What struck me about him was his extraordinary sense of being so evil. This was a really evil man.
Straight in with it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's good journalism.
Just the way he talks in his presentation there with his, tie. You're just totally evil.
We'd heard a lot about Rachman, and finally here he was sitting in this room. But I don't think any of us were prepared to see such a grotesque individual. Kind of gravelly type of voice, a sort of almost a diseased voice, if you like. The kind of thing which went, "Oh, Mrs. Denny, what do you want to see me for? I mean, I've done nothing."
Pause.
De Freitas decided that...
Incredible.
I haven't heard any recordings of Rachman's voice, but there's a suggestion that the sterilization that he was given by the mid-century Germans did affect his voice in that way, his hormonal changes, whatever.
There was a fear in England that went far deeper than just the working class racism. That behind the polite veneer of the middle classes...
Do you remember I worked as a producer, right? This big shot, like C-level guy gave this speech once. And he just had a woman's voice. Like he had a really high-pitched woman's voice. And afterwards, I was trying to like broach this subject with it. I was like, how come he's got a woman's voice then? Right, this is kind of in New York as well. So probably there was a bit of proto-wokery going on. But I don't give a shit. I've always been politically incorrect. I was just like, what's going on here then? And nobody would kind of give the answer. I was not looking back now though. I'm wondering if he was on hormones and he was kind of on the change type thing.
I wonder, or testicular cancer maybe, or something like that. I don't know.
No, I just don't. But he really did have a very like a. You have a woman's voice, my lord. It was ridiculous.
Like if someone sounds like they've actually it could have actually been castrated. I mean, it does happen to occasional people, doesn't it? Like, but that does take the deepness out of your voice. It's gone. But I don't think people who take hormones. You mean like transgender people? That doesn't actually necessarily change their voice that much. Castration totally does.
I had to ask people because I'd never experienced that. It's just weird to hear a man talk literally with a woman's voice. It's very odd.
Simon, I wanted to ask for a music check. Is this Aphex Twin we just had here?
There will be a bit of Aphex Twin. I can't remember if just flicking up my thing.
Just playing at this bit. I think it was a dark Aphex Twin track.
It likely is. I think you've got the ear for Aphex Twin much more than me, and I think a lot of the Aphex Twin stuff doesn't come up when I Shazam it because I think their stuff is a bit more protected. But he does use a few Aphex tracks through.
I think it's burial.
No.
This one sounded like Aphex Twin from Ambient Works Volume 2.
That's he uses
if in doubt, it's burial.
He uses a track called Number 23 from that album, so
he loves that album. You can tell.
Yeah,
but I just noticed we paused it, but Curtis was saying something about something lying underneath the working class racism. I don't know what he means by working class racism. Like, is that different? But he's saying like you get that anyway, but there was also something else going on.
Yeah, he's more or less quoting from De Freitas's book. Actually, he's pretty much cribbing that actual paragraph where he talks about there was a kind of middle class ruthlessness that was there in people, and that the actual outward manifestations of racism, so to speak, if you like, in the kind of crudely amplified form of working class bigotry, quote, was a sort of like an antibody response on the surface to something much deeper that was going on, that was, again, going back to David Graeber, this idea that the underpinning structural violence of the society had dissipated with empire. And the fact is all the bureaucratic structures that kept people in line were still there. So this kind of pressure of the system collapsing brought out this kind of seemingly un-English sense of violent reaction towards the other, the foreigner. And so it was more than that. It was a kind of it was like, the Douglas Murray thing you said, the stories run out, the civilizational sort of, mojo has evaporated. And that gives this kind of sort of deep lashing out reaction at a level that's beyond just, I don't like the look of that person.
Call me old-fashioned, but strikes me that what's really going on is people don't like gangsters taking over their street and filling them with
perfectly rational reasons.
You mean bigots don't like that? You mean? Yeah.
I mean,
that's it.
I mean, and this is, this is the thing though. So much quote unquote talk about race is ultimately all you have to do is read Thomas Sowell, everybody's favorite black economist, to know that like ultimately it comes down to this again and again, which is people don't want to live around crime. People don't like standard
alien atmosphere. They had a nice atmosphere and it got shitter. Like obviously they're not happy about it.
Well, I mean, to remember back, many streams ago, when you were talking about, for instance, like in America, the waves of black migration out to the suburbs, where you had the first wave that would assimilate.
Yeah, black flight, white flight. Yeah.
Keep up the standards. And it was only then when the broader familial associations meant that people came en masse that the culture changed. And again, as people, I mean, Morgoth made this point in a tweet the other week, it's the fact that when there is a secure majority that's able to obtain the dominant culture and keep it that way, there's going to be less aggravation and concern. And at this point where it's beginning to change the hegemonic culture, you're going to get that tension.
I mean, let's face it. Right, we mentioned Priti Patel earlier. Okay, now let's just overlook her role in Boris Way for a second. Okay, and just look at Patel. If every single immigrant was Priti Patel, right? If Rachman, rather than coming in and doing what he'd done, just built a bunch of houses, and it was just like rows upon rows of Priti Patel drinking tea in a posh accent, these people would have less of a problem with it than what actually happened, which is what we've been watching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it does come down to what I talked about with BAP years ago. What do they get? The culture of civility,
the ordeal of civility,
And it's funny because this is the tragedy of the Penguin in Batman 2, who we mentioned. Penguin's tragedy is that he wants to be accepted by high society, but high society, no matter what he does, reject him because they see him as a lowlife and a gangster. And so then he takes out his anger against that high society by engaging in more and more vicious crimes. That's like the heart of the original Penguin character from 1930s, like Bill Finger Batman, right? And it's weird. It's basically what we're watching with Rachman here is like a retelling of that basic story again and again. So
yeah,
interesting.
It's like in a way that you used to get some readings of Othello that would emphasize this point, that it's not so much that you can't transplant a modern idea of a kind of vicious reflexive racism onto the story of Othello, because the point of Othello in some way is how much he tries to become part of Venetian society.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. That's very similar to the reading I give in Foundations of Shakespeare, which is now seen as reactionary by right-on Chicago critics and things like that. But go on, Horace. Go on.
Oh, just there's a documentary related to all this that people might want to watch. It's on YouTube. It's just called Notting Hill Riot from 2005. David Humphrey's channel. I watched that, and it was about there was a riot in I don't know, what was it, in the mid-50s. It was like, young British guys, in some cases starting fights, in some cases taking on people who were aggressive to them, and it developed into rioting and some buildings burned and stuff. And all the people put away for it, like a few dozen people were put in prison for the violence. I think virtually every one of them, or all of them, were young white English guys, and they were put away by a judge called Salmon or something. It's like, so even in the mid-50s, there was like a machine ready to swing into place to basically force people to submit. Just don't fight back, don't complain, don't stand up to us. We're the state. We're doing this. You're having it. and that was that. So just if people want to watch that.
Well, particularly after the Race Relations Act in
this was
65,
I'm talking
68.
more than I'm talking 10 years or more before that.
Right,
But
okay.
the Race Relations Acts were immensely significant.
this
That
would
was
have been
the
the
Race
right-
Relations group, like a network of
It would have
activists beginning
been
to stamp
after the
themselves legislatively.
1948 Nationality Act, I believe.
I think it was 55. Yeah, it was so it's 7 years after the Windrush. I think it was mid 50s, and it was like an early example of just absolute in your face two-tier non-justice, like injustice. Just that, so before the Race Relations Acts, certain parts of the state were already captured by these activists.
There was a hard ruthlessness and a suspicion of others.
A suspicion of prostitutes, pimps, and gangsters ruining a high street. A justified suspicion of gangsters, pimps, and prostitutes. I mean, let's not beat around the bush, Adam.
Why are you not talking about the discourse
Freitas gave it a
around those
name.
crimes, though? Why are you focusing on the phenomena themselves? That's racist. You're supposed to focus on the discourse around those crimes. That's what matters. That's what affects.
I just don't understand this apologia for criminality that's going on.
Yeah.
It's odd, and I'm surprised to hear you say Navarra engage in this, because Aaron Bastani himself quoted notorious white advocate Sam Francis with the term anarcho-tyranny. Just yesterday, I think he said, "Let's say what you want about the right, but when they talk about anarcho-tyranny, they're absolutely correct." And he was talking about the arresting of pensioners for holding up pro-Palestine signs.
But, yes, someone with like holding a magazine cover, wasn't it?
I mean, bizarre, ridiculous what's happening. But so in a strange way, even the left are starting to see, well, from their point of view, it's like, well, this is still like the same neoliberal state that's engaging in this, regardless of. So I'm actually kind of surprised that Navarra engage in excusing criminality, Horace.
It's all to be encouraged. That's good. I didn't know that. That's good.
He called it Englishism. It came, he said, from both an anger and a melancholy at the loss of their empire.
How dare they?
Then Peter Rackman died of a heart attack. And Michael de Freitas suddenly found that he was the new face of evil.
Mr. de Freitas, why will you not take the rent from this man here?
I don't own the property.
But your name's on the rent book.
Is it?
Well, you know it is. We can probably show it to you. Come here, Mr. de Freitas, because I need to know the facts about this. Why will you not take his rent from him?
It's literally a gangster.
This just going to say there's elements there of the way Rackman set things up. I mean, he had about 33 different companies, and one of the things he would do is when he bought properties, he would put the ownership of individual flats within the properties into the names of different companies, and then he would try and sort of make it difficult to track who was responsible for the company by asking someone, one of his distant cronies, to act as a company officer. So there was always a difficulty in unpicking his matters. The police, Metropolitan Police, actually formed a special unit to try and deal just with Rackman.
Oh yeah, you mentioned about, was it Hilaire Belloc who wrote early in the 20th century about how when like a certain group enters a market, the whole market has to adapt to the much more aggressive, ruthless tactics, and basically it becomes unviable to just do business in a normal, sort of honest, calm way. I think this is another example of the same thing. It's like a lot of the tax laws, the complicated tax laws and the invasive tax, collecting practices that a lot of people come up against now were put in place to combat this kind of thing. Because I'm guessing, Simon said he paid no income tax. I'm guessing he registered himself as a corporation and had it all and paid himself out as dividends or something like that, which you can still do actually. But this is another thing, I would venture to say that the average British landlord at this time was nowhere near as unscrupulous in how they carried out their business. But landlords in general get a bad name and they'll get legislated against and extremely heavily regulated. Being a landlord is like barely viable for most people now. And I'm talking people with one extra property, apart from the one they live in, because you can't. It's so hard to evict people. Every time Labour get in power, they make it hard to evict people, right? And they'll curse the landlords. There's the same thing in New York. There's like notoriously bad landlords and stuff. What it really is like generally a few bad people who, if you just deported them, if you just never let Peter Rackman move to London, you wouldn't have this problem, and you wouldn't need all that discrimination against like legit landlords.
He did lead to the Rent Act in 1965. 3 years after he died, it did lead to that being passed to give tenants protections.
Right, and it's like, let's not have that. Let's have more of a free market, I would say, and just deport Peter Rackman. Just don't have him around. Deport Michael de Freitas. Simple.
I should mention, by the way, that do you remember there was that review called "The Paranoid Style" in Adam Curtis by the New York magazine, the New York Review. This actually criticizes this documentary for being sordid for sordid's sake. Says what de Freitas actually represents is never made clear, but it's sordid, and that's the whole point. I don't know if I'm guessing this is Curtis being criticized from the left, but it's not actually clear what he's up to here, what point he's making, and I don't really know what point he's making either. So maybe you can explain it.
I'll put a link to that particular article. It was a journalist called I can't remember his first name, something Freer Jones.
Here we go. I'll put it in the chat. Because I've got it in archive.
I would say that journalist, he did have to be sectioned in a psychiatric ward at one point, and
right, okay.
he had a bit of a problem with alcohol as well. And when his wife was dying of cancer, he rushed to write the first draft of his memoir for her to read before she died. I thought, that's showing a bit of ego on you, isn't it?
Okay. So, I'm still not clear as to whether Curtis is defending de Freitas and Rackman here or not. Like, what's he up to?
I'd suspend judgment until later.
Okay.
Suspend judgment till later.
Alex, would you kindly leave him? Let us.
Jiang Qing came in secret to Mount Lushan to meet Mao Zedong, where he was confronting the other revolutionaries. She was determined to stop them from overthrowing Mao. Many of them were the men who had forced her into her strange, isolated life, and she hated them.
I love the look of that guy just now because he looked like a villain from a Bruce Lee movie. The previous guy just had that kind of look about him.
That's the famous guy, isn't it? It was, what was his name, Simon? He's the guy who's paraphrased as having said, like, being asked about the French Revolution. What do you make of the French Revolution? And
was that Chu Enlai? Was it?
Chu Enlai. That's it. Yeah. And he said
is
it.
This the Gang of Four, is it? Are these chaps?
Yeah, except Mao. He wasn't one of them. But I think these two were part of the Gang of Four. And wasn't Mao's wife one of them as well?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's what we're leading on to.
Chu Enlai was one of them. Then
Mao's wife, this dude, the guy from Fist of Fury, and
and Ken Hom, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the guy with the big claws and the Hall of Mirrors. What film is that? Kind of looks a lot like that guy. Yeah.
Who's the guy who did Project A? Who's that? There was another. It wasn't like there's a handful of these famous fighters. There's like Sammo Hung, Jet Li.
Who is in the Gang of Four? Roy Jenkins.
Yeah. Shirley Williams.
It's a different Gang
the
of
one,
Four.
Who's the one everyone forgets from the Gang of Four? Is Shirley Williams. She's famous.
So this guy we're looking at here is called
David Owen.
David Owen.
Shong Kwao. This is this guy we're on the screen right now.
It's called him Bob.
The other one is Yao Wen Huan.
Yeah, I don't think these are the Gang of Four, are they? I think these are Mao's loyal lieutenants that Jiang Qing is coming in to try and keep away from Mao.
I think this dude on the screen is Zhang Jinkao. Or if he's not, he looks an awful lot like him. I'm not saying.
Yeah, I might have
he
been
looks the same bloke to me.
I might have been blending everything together. I don't know whether Zhou Enlai was in the Gang of Four either, but Mao's wife definitely was.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of people who immediately after Mao died tried to stop reformers reforming things, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Gang of Four's a bit later on. It's about 1980, 81 when they're dealing with that.
Okay.
They were trying to stop, like, Deng Xiaoping was one of their enemies, wasn't he? Because he was a reformer.
Yes.
All that.
Jiang Qing was also convinced that these men weren't really revolutionaries. They were actually ghosts from the past, who, without realizing it, were destroying the revolution. Because their minds were still possessed by the patterns of thought of the old, decaying and corrupt empire that had ruled China for 300 years.
I should mention, by the way, that one of the fans of that old imperial Chinese empire is Giordano Mosca, the author of The Ruling Class, an elite theorist extraordinaire. He particularly liked the way in which they permanently allowed a kind of semi-circulation of elites through exams. He admired the emphasis on education in imperial China, and he prays in The Ruling Class. He praises the way in which it was theoretically possible to, ascend the ranks and become a member of the ruling class. If you did well in various different colleges and so on. Although he does criticize it for not being truly meritocratic, i.e., it still ended up being iron law of oligarchy, etc. At least they had the right idea, according to Mosca, because the elite theorists, to the extent they wanted to see anything at all, wanted an aristocracy of the talents, as they call them. And for Moscow, imperial China was the closest we ever came to that. So
because they had these very intense exams, didn't they, to join the sort of the civil service, so to speak.
The mandarins.
Was that they had to kind of be sort of sequestered in some castle or something, didn't they, and undergo very rigorous exams?
Yeah, he loved that, Moscow. So
he
does say that in practice it was a bit more corrupt than that.
People use the term Mandarin sometimes to refer to senior civil servants, don't they? In London and stuff.
Yeah,
that comes from them. Yeah, they were Mandarin. The Chinese ones were called Mandarins.
Mao pretended to give in to the demands of the other revolutionaries. But he told Jiang Qing to go to Shanghai and to prepare quietly for a new kind of revolution, one that would sweep the opposition away. Jiang Qing returned to where she had started, the studios of Shanghai. But now she was in control. And the new revolution was going to be driven by her self-expression and her imagination that had been stifled back then. The unit of one was going to take over the revolution and reshape the minds of the Chinese people.
Because she could control the people's minds, she could control their images. She became the mistress of the arts and of propaganda and culture. She does have great personal charm. It's a severe charm. It's the charm of being able to do what she wanted and to say what she wanted to. And in a society where most people say what they're expected to say, most people express the current political line. Her daring to reflect upon the past, to speak extensively about herself, and to make judgments of all sorts was extraordinary. And she's a woman of many parts, so, and needless to say, her relationship to the chairman was always the trump card.
Jiang Qing began by taking old Chinese operas and reworked them, so they became dramatic melodramas about the need to struggle against the evil forces still hidden in Chinese society. Hate was a key word in the script. It must be shouted, she said, as if it was a grenade.
So did did Mao's wife invent the moonwalk? Because that girl just did a very good moonwalk.
They're actually quite
Spontaneously as well.
they're actually quite amusing, some of these films. I'll post a link to one of them, the Red Detachment of Women, afterwards, which is this ballet, this revolutionary ballet. This is part of what they call the 8 model plays, where they took these old stories and kind of sort of deracinated them of all kind of old elements, talking about monarchs and monsters and military men and beautiful maidens and heroes and kind of, because those were all kind of what they call feudalistic and bourgeois stories, so they made them more about the revolutionary struggle, and some of them are quite actually interesting to watch. They're kind of empty, but they're very technically sort of accomplished. They're well sort of presented and danced, but they are kind of also faintly ludicrous as well, like this woman here, with her intense expressions.
Grenade that you were hurling at the enemy. And never forget, she told the heroine, that beauty is less important than will and power. But the operas were just the start. Jiang Qing's real aim was to turn the whole of China itself into a giant melodrama, to work millions of people up into an intense frenzy that would have the power to smash through the old corrupt ideas that were still lodged in people's heads and break through to a new kind of society. But at the same time, Jiang Qing herself was driven by old hatreds from her own past. And she was also going to turn that frenzy into a crusade of revenge against her old enemies, including Li Lili, who had upstaged her in Bloodshed on Wolf Mountain.
So when people talk about theatre kid occupied government now, they're literally reliving Mao's China.
This is an interesting sort of parallel here with like Surkoff from Hypernormalization, whereas it sort of mirrors Surkoff in a sort of way, that in Surkoff, his instinct was to dramatize political struggle by getting people to act it all out in big groups against each other. And Jiang Qing's idea was really to get other people to just act out her own internalized sense of conflict with her personal enemies. She was quite an imperious woman. She was quite I was unpacking some old stuff, and I had a newspaper clipping from the Sunday Times in 1981 when she was on trial in Peking, as they called it then, as I still call it now. And there was just a list of little quotations from her when she was, being tried as part of the Gang of Four. And I'll just read out some of them because some of them are quite interesting. This is the sort of insight into the mindset. This is one of the quotes that she said in the courtroom. She says, "A woman can also become emperor." Another one, "Never listen to others. You must make your own decisions. Wear what you like." She says, "Transform sorrow into hatred, hatred into indignation, and indignation into determination to fight. Wipe out all the wolves. We educate the people to keep their chins up and never to forget that beauty is less important than will and power. My work is always related to warfare." This is an interesting one that she says, "Only the left is allowed to rebel. The right is not." She says,
That's like Marcuse.
"Working class people do not sit down or bury their heads when they cry. They cry standing up." This is one I think AA would like. "All theatrical works must be submitted to the masses. Their good opinions are acted on, their erroneous ones rejected." There you go.
Yeah, I when you were reading some of those quotes, I couldn't help but think, if Mao's wife was bought before the Jedi Council, Yoda would almost certainly say, "Much fear I sense in you, much anger."
And she literally has
she
literally has a quote that she would fire back at him, which is, "Do not cut me off in the middle of things I have to say."
Amazing. Now I'm struggling to square this with the book by Mao that I read before on liberalism, where he basically just says like you've got to kill the liberal in yourself.
Mm.
Sounds like this woman has not killed the liberal within herself to me at all. And how is this like? If this idea takes root in communist China, that's going to cause a problem for Mao, because you've got all these kind of 60s, countercultural individual expressionists on the loose now, not listening to authority. So how's that going to work?
And this is what I wonder about the contrast between Mao and Stalin that we talked about before, whereas Stalin was very keen to downplay cult of personality. I wonder if people like, Jiang Qing, because she's so sort of dedicated to Mao, in her own way, she processes this as an authentic struggle of the individual revolutionary, the unit of one that Curtis refers to there, that kind of unbalances the system in a way that's different from what Stalin was doing in Russia.
I don't know. I just think I can't see this going well. I feel like in a communist society, you need people to take orders,
and
not question authority. So this seems bad to me.
When he launched his cultural revolution, it was sort of going directly against that, wasn't it? It was like, it was extremely authoritarian and top down. But then when he felt like other people in this sort of governing circle were taken over from him, he launched a youth rebellion, student rebellion against them, didn't he? That's apparently what the Cultural Revolution was.
But
So
is the idea that Mao is using this youth rebellion as a counter gang against his rivals? Is the idea?
That is apparently what the Cultural Revolution was, yeah. And he used the slogan, "It's right to rebel." Now, obviously, he only meant against his enemies, not against the whole regime. And it got pretty out of hand. I mean, that's when they stopped it. And they started executing people, I think, for having participated in what they themselves incited. But yeah, for a few years, they were like the Red Guards were allowed to stage their own show trials and stuff, impromptu show trials, and just execute people, I think, or send them for execution.
I won't have this revisionism in the chat. Kay saying Stalin did the same with the NKVD. Actually, I think you'll find that he appointed Beria, and Beria did a very thoroughgoing audit of the NKVD and chastised Yagoda for excesses during one of the purges, excesses from Yagoda. And in fact, we know about many of the tactics of the NKVD and the excesses of Yagoda from that report by Beria. So if you're dissing the NKVD, the information you're using to do it was literally generated by Stalin. All right, let's carry on.
Have you guys got a favourite NKVD leader or Chekist?
I would have to go with Beria personally, Horace.
Beria, the big one.
Classic wins every time. Yeah,
the Man United of NKVD leaders, right?
Yagoda, too much too soon. I would use the word excessive. Beria, sensible, centered. No left or right deviation in Beria.
I like Dzerzhinsky. I'm an OG Chekist. The early days were the best days, I think. The first album.
Who was the one before Yagoda? He was too soft. Yagoda was too excessive, and the one before him was too soft. I forget his name now.
So there was Yezhov straight after Yagoda, right? Yezhov was the one who executed Yagoda, or denounced and executed. And then Yezhov was executed as well after another couple of years.
Yeah, he was excessive too.
He was a bastard. Yeah.
In fact, Yezhov is the really excessive one. Yagoda actually, bit of a slouch.
Yezhov's like in the Lord of the Flies. Yezhov's like Roger, the one who's like pretty quiet, but he's actually the most evil.
Yeah,
Yagoda was too showy.
Yeah, whereas Beria, he just got it just right, like kind of Goldilocks and NKVD leader. So.
Talking about political deviation there, just by the way, one of the clips of the film was Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy. Interesting stat about it. It's one of the most watched films of all time. The official Chinese government statistics say it had a total audience of 7.3 billion in 1974. Now, of course, there was only just approaching 1 billion people in China, I think, at that point. Is that right? But Yeah,
They claimed that what had an audience of
the
7
total
billion?
audience of that particular film would have been 7.3 billion, but the actual explanation is because they made everybody sit through it about 7 times.
Everyone in the country, every single
Pretty much,
person.
yeah. And it would be a sign of political deviation if you didn't show up to a viewing.
Shipping people like 100 miles to the nearest cinema and stuff.
I just think it was organically popular, personally.
Yeah.
All right, let's carry on. By the way, today we've managed 10 minutes in almost 2 hours, which has got to be a new record.
Wow.
Can't really blame Nick, can we?
We're doing well.
Here.
We're doing well.
Living quietly in New York, completely forgotten, was an Irish woman called Ethel Boole, who personified the very opposite of what Jiang Qing believed. Because Boole thought that the way to change the world was to give yourself up to the force of revolution, to surrender your individual self and your identity to the dream of a better future.
By the way, even I know this is Aphex Twin, because when AAA was little, I made a playlist called Quiet Time, where I put a load of piano solos on it with Philip Glass minimalism, this Aphex Twin track, and a few other bits of minimal piano. So even
well identified. This is Avril 14th by Aphex Twin.
Do you know, if you ever want to listen to really lovely, pleasant piano music, try Harold Budd. Everyone, that's just a nice tip for you. Just very pleasant music. Budd with 2 Ds.
Harold Budd, okay.
For others. At the end of the 19th century, Ethel Boole had gone to Russia as a young girl and become involved with the revolutionaries in St. Petersburg. And she wrote a novel called The Gadfly. It told a powerful romantic story of a young girl who sacrificed everything for revolution. She then married a Polish revolutionary called Wilfrid Voynich. And in the 1920s, they went to live in New York, where he worked as an antiquarian bookseller. And Ethel Boole forgot about revolution. But in 1950...
She dwindled into a bourgeois. Didn't she? Come on, Ethel, admit it. With the comfortable bookseller wife lifestyle.
Yeah. Go on, Horace.
Oh, I just looked at her wiki page. It said she was the daughter of the man who invented Boolean mathematics.
That's coming up. That's coming up. Yeah. Yeah.
1959, when the Bolshoi Ballet came to New York, the dancers were astonished to find that she was alive, and they rushed to visit her. Because Ethel Boole, without her realizing it, had become a hero of the Russian Revolution. She discovered that her novel had inspired millions of young revolutionaries in the 1920s to rise up and fight for the revolution, inspired by the idea of surrendering themselves to a grand historic cause.
Does that mean Stalin put it on the Soviet reading list? Because there's no way that's happening by accident in the Soviet Union. So.
Well, I think it's because in the nature of the Gadfly, the story, it's one of these kind of powerfully motivating, romantic stories about revolution. It kind of appeals to popular altruism that eventually gets betrayed by political realism. You know, right. It's the same confusion that people have by when they talk about Romeo and Juliet as a romantic play. It ends in a fucking disaster. They kill themselves. You know, it's the sort of product of a kind of a depressive view of romantic love in a way. It's not a model to follow. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, and the Gadfly is kind of similar. So in a sense, it's kind of perfectly safe because it plays to those romantic feelings that you maybe want to engender in the kind of loyal followers, but it also has a dark lesson that, you know, if you're not a trained, you know, revolutionary, you're not going to make it.
This is a bit off topic, but you guys being Shakespeare fans, was Romeo and Juliet more or less based upon Pyramus and Thisbe? Do you know that story?
Don't know.
Yeah.
Does nobody? Do people in the audience know the story of Pyramus and Thisbe? This is a Greek, a Greek legend.
Pyramus and Thisbe is the play that
In A
Bottom
Midsummer Night's Dream.
putting on in
Yeah.
Midsummer Night's Dream. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is the same story. It's a tragedy. It's the same story. I assume he must have copied that.
He would take old kind of stories and sort of augment them and enhance them to.
Yeah, in the chat,
make
nobody's
his
heard of
plays.
this, but I had a book of like myths and legends once for when we went on holiday. We used to get a few books to read on the journey and stuff. And that one of mine was a book of myths and legends, and that was one of the Greek myths, and it was achingly. I hadn't read Romeo and Juliet. It was just this short story of 8 or 10 pages, but it was just like beautiful. And then just they kill themselves. It's a beautiful tragedy. It's lovely. It's a brilliant story. It's one of the best books you could have as a kid, like a book of myths and legends. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Norse and Greeks and Romans. It was brilliant.
Almost none of Shakespeare's stories are completely original, apart from Tempest. There's no.
It just used to annoy me. My dad was an English teacher. Did Shakespeare and stuff, and he used to mock anything that I put on, like Star Wars or anything. He'd just go, "Oh, it's just this or that. It's cowboys and Indians in Spain. Every story had been done before, and he thought they'd all been done by Shakespeare. Shakespeare originated all these stories." And when I managed to mention to him Pyramus and Thisbe, he was stumped. It was like, no, it all goes back to Greece. He didn't want to acknowledge. He wanted it all to be Shakespeare for some reason.
Yeah,
but no, these are.
I think it's just the thing that old guys do. I remember back in the 80s, I was buying a vinyl of the soundtrack to The Empire Strikes Back, and the guy in the record shop was saying, "Oh yeah, he's just ripped off Korngold, hasn't he?"
What's that? What's Korngold?
Ernest Korngold. He did soundtracks for like Errol Flynn pirate movies, like The Crimson Pirate. And this bloke said, "Oh, I've listened to it. It's rubbish. Yeah, it's just Korngold."
John Williams' soundtracks are genuinely brilliant. They are terrific.
Do you remember there was that town, Your Woman, White Town?
Yeah.
The song, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you listen to that, it sounds quite a lot like the Imperial March, right?
Yeah, you're right.
That song is lifted from a much older song, I think, by Al Johnson. Sorry, it's Al Bowley.
Yeah, it's a 20s song or something, isn't it?
It's a 1920 song, and then you're like, oh, did John Williams lift the Imperial March from Al Bowley?
Yeah.
No, but that White Town song just uses like 3 notes from that bit of
but it's true. John Williams did lift a lot from Holster Planets. You can tell.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, that's really old, and that is brilliant as well.
I like his stuff.
Imperial March.
It doesn't sound anything. Like it's a whole completely different rhythm and everything. It's like a all that. It's like really staccato, isn't it?
My Woman has been cited as an inspiration. Whereas Al Bowley's 1930 songs, My Woman has been cited as the inspiration for the opening notes as John Williams' Imperial March.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's
the same song, which is also White Town, Your Woman.
I think that's a coincidence. I think John Williams was genuinely inspired.
No, there's nothing original, son. It's all a rip-off.
Yeah, it's all been done before.
All great art is love and theft, somebody once said.
Yeah. Amateurs borrow, professionals steal.
That's a Bob Dylan album, Love and Theft, right? What's amazing about that album is almost every single line is a reference to some other line. And I can't remember if it was a book or a website, but somebody went through every single lyric on Dylan's Love and Theft. And it's like, this line is from some Japanese novel from the 1930s. And this line here is from something else. So, that is a postmodern masterpiece, Love and Theft.
There you go.
Probably my favorite Dylan album as well. So, came out on 9/11, 2001. I remember it. I was so excited. And the day was ruined by actual 9/11, which I watched with my Bob Dylan mate. So anyway,
it's a bad day to bury a Bob Dylan album.
Then the same had happened in China. Again, millions of young revolutionaries had carried the gadfly in their backpacks as they fought to create a new kind of future. Now, Bull was living alone. and she had inherited a mysterious book from her husband. It was called the Voynich manuscript, and it was written in a language no one has been able to decipher. But one ballerina in the Bolshoi group didn't go to visit Ethel Bull. She was called Maya Plisetskaya. She was the most famous ballerina in the world, and she hated the communist system. Plisetskaya's father had been executed by firing squad during the purges of the 1930s.
The excesses of the non-Stalin sanctioned NKVD later correctly trialed and imprisoned by Beria, just in the interests of accurate history.
Her mother had been sent to a prison in the wastes of Siberia. As she became famous, she was watched all the time by agents from the KGB. She couldn't trust anyone. Everyone around her had been told to inform on her. And she hated what she called the men with sweaty faces, the party bosses who leered at her as she danced. In private, Maya Plisetskaya wrote out her own manifesto. I don't know about other people, she wrote. I'll say it for myself. I don't want to be a slave. I don't want people whom I don't know to decide my fate. I don't want a leash on my neck. I don't want a cage, even if it is a platinum one. I don't want to be rejected or branded. I don't want to hide what I am thinking. I don't want to bow my head, and I won't do it. That's not what I was born for. Both Plisetskaya and Jiang Qing were part of the new individualism that was rising up everywhere, while Ethel Bull's collective vision was dying. But at the same time, a new revolution was about to begin. It would offer a dream of liberation and freedom for the new individuals. But it would end by controlling them.
Pause. That's absolutely classic Curtis. He's just clocking the old Curtis again. It's great, isn't it?
That was good. The way he threaded together these disparate elements is pretty inspired, to be honest. Even by his standards, that was quite a head spinner.
I do want to quickly object. There was no new spirit of individualism rising up in both the 30s and the 60s, or whatever he just said. You know, that ballerina was in the 30s, right? And the fucking
no. Shit, well, she went on quite a long time. Plisetskaya. Yeah.
It's not a new spirit of individualism. It's like people not accommodating to communism, the fucking bizarre aberration of history that it was. But obviously, Curtis doesn't like to make those distinctions.
Is the suggestion here, though, that 60s individualism is a reaction against, like, Soviet authoritarianism?
All over the place.
Possibly one strand. Possibly.
And in a strange twist, the person whose ideas would guide that revolution was Ethel Bull's father. He was a mathematician from the 19th century called George Bull. Bull had been a deeply religious man, and one afternoon in the 1840s, as he walked across a field near Doncaster, a thought had flashed into his head that he believed was a religious vision.
How old was she, this woman? For her dad to be around in the 1840s. Let's have a think now. So this was the 1950s.
She died at quite an advanced age.
I can see it.
Bull suddenly saw how you could use mathematics to unlock the mysterious processes of human thought. The same symbols that were used in algebra could be used to describe what went on inside people's heads as they followed a train of thought, expressing all the twists and turns in simple binary form. If this, then that. If that, then not this.
giving the NPCs a lot of credit there. If you ask me, I often wonder if people even have that. If people's thoughts are even that complex, Simon.
Well, doesn't it require an internal monologue? And some people apparently don't have that.
I'm not even sure if it's if this then that. It's just like can't picture an apple. Anyway, let's go here.
And in 1854, Boole wrote a book that caused a sensation. It was called An Investigation of the Laws of Thought. Its aim, to investigate the fundamental laws of those operations of the mind by which reasoning is performed. Boole showed how even abstract concepts like virtue and passion could be put into equations, and then the symbols used to follow a pattern of thought to its conclusion.
Oh, this is truly autistic madness, isn't it? This is kind of what I mean. You know that book, Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt. In there, I'm pretty sure he just says they're like all these guys in the Victorian period, which just had Asperger's. All of
this stuff was still alive when I did philosophy at uni, and this was one of the mandatory courses, logic, like formal logic, like logic equations and stuff. And it's pretty hard, but like it does make sense. I mean, it is logical, but it's not logical to think that everything can be reduced to a letter or a number. So in that sense, it's not at all logical or not real. But it is still alive. It's still taught in unis. Like this is still current.
Yeah, and it leads to a lot of that kind of we're going to science the shit out of this, bro, kind of thing that you find on the progressive left.
Excessive left brainism in a way, but although I suppose you wouldn't say that of the left, really. But yeah.
Well, that's true, isn't it? That's just basic Aristotle. That you cultivate virtue through good habits. It's basic Aristotle.
And yeah, it's not like virtue is not innate. It's innate enough that we arrived at it over many generations, but it's not innate in that you don't. I mean, you do have to be taught it, don't you? You do have to have virtue taught or beaten or whatever into you in some way, or incentivized into you.
Cultivated.
Yeah, it's like a collective habit. We cultivate it in each other, and we all benefit from that. Yeah.
Boole was driven by an almost messianic belief that he had been allowed a glimpse by God into the truth of the human mind. But there were those who doubted this. The philosopher Bertrand Russell was astonished by the brilliance of Boole's mathematics. But he didn't believe that what Boole had discovered was anything to do with human thought. Human beings, Russell said, do not think like that.
I would say that Bertrand Russell was probably correct in that assertion. Would you agree, Simon? I mean,
yes, I think I would.
What Boole was really doing was something else. Throughout the British Empire, science had played a powerful role which has been wiped and forgotten today. Its job had been to create abstract systems, to catalogue and order the chaotic reality that the British ruled over.
See, something about me loves this, though. It's so autistic.
Yeah, it's a conflict between the sort of the male brain systematization instinct, towards developing scalar systems like empires that you need to have instrumentalities for governance for millions of people. At the same time, it is just still Boole's exercise, a modeling of if you like, psychological processes that arrive at decision points, but it's not sufficiently complex enough to
the Victorian pastime of taxonomy, the Victorian kind of habit of wanting to categorize all things into boxes,
lists and grids.
It just seems, I see glimmers of it sometimes in AAA because.
Oh yeah.
Well,
the game tournament the other day.
Well, the game she set up 15 different game tournaments, and then she's got all these characters. She set them all up, and then she wanted each individual game played between the two of them. And then yesterday, the missus has got these. We're having the bathroom done, so she's got the bloody Pharaoh and ball paint things out again, and she's got all these different tiles she's looking at. And you know me, I'm colorblind, so I'm just they all fucking look the same to me. It's all just various shades of fucking off-white again. But then she had these color strips, and yesterday she wanted to sit down with me, and she wanted to color match every doll that she's got. So she's got, like, you know, Barbie and Belle from Beauty and the Beast and Elsa and all these different dolls. She wanted to color match their dresses against the Pharaoh on ball paint, which is again a disaster for me because I'm colorblind.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Is your dress purple there?" "No, it's green, Dad." "Oh shit!" So I was getting like rudimentary errors, but also, like, in the process of doing it, we were building up a taxonomy of the dresses. So that was, by the time we'd finished, there were 20 different neatly color coded dresses, and something about that whole process is kind of quite, how can I put it, like reminds me of that song by Radiohead, you know, Everything in Its Right Place. You kind of ordered the world, so I can see where this impetus comes from, you know.
I'm going to send her a book of Pantone color codes for her birthday.
Oh, I tell you what, the Pharaoh on ball, just you know, it's like horses piss, elephant breath, you know, dogs vomit. Fuck off with all of it.
To turn it into something that could be managed and controlled. It ranged from making maps of what was called the dark interior to cataloguing millions of species of animals and insects, and studying and categorizing different human types. And what Bull was doing was the next step in that process.
Here's Ed Dutton.
That's right.
Carrying on this sort of behavior.
He was taking the chaotic reality of human thought and making a simplified, rational map of that other dark interior, the human mind, so it could be managed and controlled. But in the 19th century, no one could see any way of using the system that Bull had created, and it languished and was quietly forgotten, and the British Empire began to collapse.
But what if they were onto something? That's the question I always ask. You know that like the 19th century scientific mindset and need to make laws and need to categorize and so on is still basically the foundation for many, 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 many different things, including such things as the greenhouse gas theory, for example, comes from that. We were talking about the elite theory earlier on. That came out of this need to categorize, understand, come up with laws, almost like trying to make everything like physics, you know. Economics comes out of this as well. And it's like, well, it's possible that they were all onto something. And essentially the tragedy of the 20th century is that a lot of it was jacked because Nazis or something, or because, I don't know, relativity or something. So I there's still part of me that thinks, like, well, hold on a second, maybe we can't just say all of this stuff was bunk because the British Empire collapsed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's always an interesting part of this particular sphere, actually. Whereas what we're doing here is, you know, we're looking at these processes of systematization and these methodologies that Curtis has covered in previous documentaries, The Trap, All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace, of devising rational systems to coordinate or explain or manage human behavior and the unforeseen deleterious consequences of that, which would then play out and which we now ponder. But at the same time, the instinct towards that kind of organization of information, I think, is a very important one. And as you say, there's this point where this move into a bureaucratization of society means that certain of those elements have to be kind of abstracted from the hands of the gentleman amateur scientists and the gentleman amateur explorers and the kind of, the sort of the officials trained in the British system of imperial discipline, and it has to be made more diffuse. The power has to be kind of relegated to no one in a sense. So these kinds of systems devised by unusually driven men have to be made in themselves into more abstracted kind of systematic methods.
Isn't the scientific method itself an expression of that? It's saying like there is a particular way to establish something. Usually by laboratory experiments, right? Control every other condition and vary one. I think of that as the epitome of the scientific method, and that means we cease to debate over how to consider something scientific, right? If we all agree on that method, I just think I was agreeing with you. I think
which seems to be one of the very things that's been under attack in the last sort of cultural period.
Yeah,
and it came up in the first place in the 19th century, right?
I've just read. This is on my mind at the moment because I've just written a piece in defense of value-free analysis for, an academic journal, and I've also been reading other pieces for the same journal, and one of the points that is made is that scientific knowledge has a kind of humility as its basis. That actually, we don't know a lot. We know a very small, so in order to establish anything as a fact, you have this kind of radical skepticism, and therefore, you need evidence, you need these constants, as you're talking about, Horus, and it comes with humility, whereas the kind of epistemology of postmodernism that has replaced it weirdly has a kind of hubris and arrogance attached to it, where it just kind of knows the right answer already, even though it hasn't been established through any scientific method whatsoever. And it works much more through the logic of, heretics and apostates and true believers type thing. Vision of the anointed, as Sol would say, which strikes me as not a very good way of establishing knowledge. Maybe the Victorians were onto something,
Obviously, we would relate that to the Second World War as one reason for that, right? The killing off of the ideas of scientific racism and eugenics and so on, and all the logic that went with that. But also more recently, obviously, transgenderism, transsexual thinking requires basically a denial of reality, right? Sex has to be denied, gender has to be put in place of it.
Yeah, or
mental instead of real.
A denial of a one objective truth. Instead, it's your truth and my truth.
Yeah, and until they're defeated, they will continue to try and corrode that, and they will have some success. I mean, leftists are still in control of most institutions, including scientific stuff, including archives and stuff, and they will literally destroy evidence if it helps justify their politics,
or create systems which will measure things in the wrong way, if you like. A friend sent me a clip yesterday. It was a conversation between Stuart Lee and Armando Iannucci, and Stuart Lee was talking about. He was in Newport or something, and he had to get a coach somewhere else, and he had some app on it, to book a ticket or something like that. And basically, he came into this weird Kafkaesque situation where he was trying to get this coach hadn't left yet, but when he tried to scan, there was a mistake with the app, and the app showed that the coach had already left. So he was physically on the coach trying to get this thing scanned. But the guy said, I can't let you on because technically we've already left. It's kind of ludicrous situation. And he was kind of trying to get his head around this idea that these instruments to measure reality don't correspond with objective reality. He couldn't get on because it had already left, but he was literally standing on it as it was. He was trying to. It's mad. I'll post.
You find that with various, especially I found that with other like transport apps. Strangely, I don't even know why I got experience of that really, but the National Rail Inquiry's website, it segments things into 15 minutes. I can't go into all the details of it, but basically it's just impossible to look up certain trains because it has to fall within a certain. Because of the way they just designed the app, basically, there's just gaps in it that they don't acknowledge because they don't have to because they've got no competition. There's only one provider of this service. So they just don't bother making it properly. Like the TfL stuff is sometimes, a lot of monopoly stuff is like this, but also some private things. And it's just they made the app seamless so that people couldn't call customer service. That's basically what they're doing, right? They want you to sort everything out yourself and never call them or email them or anything. And so they create what they think is seamless, and they've covered every possible route through it, but they haven't. Obviously, the bus to them has left when it hasn't left, and ridiculous.
All right, chaps. Well, I wonder. I thought we might get through this today, but it's not going to happen, is it? We're 2 hours and 23 in. Is here a good moment, Simon? Or
up to you? You make the call.
Yeah, let's. I can remember the birds on the screen. 48. We were talking about Victorian science and Boole. There are quite a few super chats today. Chris,
I don't mind keeping stum if you do want to finish it. I can shut up for the last 10
No,
minutes.
I think we might as well. This is going to go on. I mean, I reckon we're going to still be doing "Can't Get You Out of My Head" by 2026. Because you're going away, aren't you, Simon, for a while?
Can't get you out of my deepest lore. Yes, I'll be away in November.
So yeah, because of that and various other things, I reckon we might as well just make peace with the fact it's going to be a very long time on this one series. So
just this last few minutes of material, it might be good to have Ben Pyle back. He was a great guest. I don't mind dropping out if you want Ben Pyle in. He knows his shit.
Well, Chris Brymer says, I heard Mao liked watching people die. Well, I don't know anything about it, so I can't really comment on that. I don't want to upset any Maoists who might be watching. Could be lies. Husband Bismarck Man says, how Australianized did Simon become in his youth?
I don't know what that means. I mean, I love Australia. It was a great country to live, lovely people, but they were kind of blind to the overregulation of governance that was creeping in back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I always had this saying, you kind of have to sell your freedom for a quiet life to live in Australia.
Okay. I just glanced at Twitter and I noticed Gavin Newsom is tweeting. And the tweet just says, why is submissive Stephen so short? And I've noticed they're attacking Stephen Miller for being short at the moment. The Democrats. This is the level that politics has got to over there. Dan Qua 111 says, EP was just a mirror to what was transpiring. If it wasn't that speech, Enoch Powell he's talking about, it would have been somebody else, and the reaction would have been the same. The plane was already rolling down the runway. I mean, I'd agree that Enoch Powell's speech is an expression of what most of the country was thinking at the time. Rave Pants says, Horus may like a musician called Stella Drone.
I like Stella Drone. I love Stella Drone. Yeah, I've listened to the Lithuanian, I think. It's my favourite Lithuanian act. Lovely music.
Okay, here's a question for Simon by Chris. He says, Curtis criticizes individualism, yet almost all his films have only Curtis's individual voice. Is this a contradiction in his work?
Not really. He's well aware of it, and he'll talk about himself being, quotes, part of the problem. He's often challenged in interviews because he's yearning for this idea that we can, quote, give ourselves up to something, some kind of collectivity that will overcome the problems of radical individualism. But he says radical individualism is out of the box. It's here to stay. I like being a radical individual, and my films illustrate that as well. But he's searching for some means by which we can enter into some sort of sense of being able to change matters for the better. He doesn't claim to come up with any solutions at all, and he's aware in our terms of the fact that bottom up power isn't something that's going to change things. He'll talk in terms of vested interests. The world being governed by very, very powerful forces, which he identifies to some extent in the way that institutions or or thinkers create these premises, these templates for running society, and how they often don't work. But at the same time, he's aware of the kind of hard realities of capital P power, and how do we come to a negotiation with that? And he feels the left completely failed to do so. They went for this network thinking that they had with things like Occupy, and they kind of missed a beat back in the early 2000s, 2010s. And now he sees the right as having the kind of march on this sort of thing, because the right has a strong cohering narrative, which essentially is nationalism. And he says that, if the left can't find a myth as strong as that, they're going to struggle to reclaim that space of collectivity.
Okay. Is he softing? Is he a soft Stalinist, Simon?
Well, he might be. He praises the fact that you need elites in some sense to take you somewhere, to give a story from which you can, springboard, your life and improve your society. So, he acknowledges that working for the BBC, there's a sort of certain function of that. He tries to see himself helping democratize that to some extent, but he also realizes that you have to have a thing, a narrative you give yourself up to, and perhaps in some ways he can see the advantage of these driven kinds of forms of leadership. As he is a journalist, he says, I want to tell you a story. He criticizes other journalists, saying, because they've kind of, like we saw in that footage last week, they've run away from telling a narrative, from telling a story, something that we can all kind of drive towards. So in some senses, he has sympathies with, the notion of elite leadership that has a beneficent aspect to it.
Coney says, fun Mao fact, Mao Zedong didn't brush his teeth. He adopted the peasant custom of rinsing his mouth with tea or salt water and chewing on tea leaves, viewing brushing as a bourgeois practice. When Dr. Li Zhu recommended brushing, Mao responded, a tiger does not brush its teeth. His favorite dish was Hunan-style red braised pork belly, because later in life he could only eat soft foods because his teeth were so rotten. ENS says, will you still review Adam Curtis's voiceless docs? Cheers. Well, I think we're in for the long haul. We are bound by completionism, aren't we?
We're going to have to finish it. Yeah. He's thinking of Trauma Zone, and possibly also we do It Felt Like a Kiss, which was a film which he did for a theatre show.
And we're going to have to do Shifty if copyright.
Yeah.
By the time we get to Shifty, it'll be 2027 anyway. So
yeah,
maybe the copyright will be, maybe it'll be on YouTube by then. What else? Let's have a look here. I think that's every. Oh, Lewis Shaw Moffat says, wanting to know when you will have Rurik Skywalkers on for the truth about Putin and Russia. Very sad you hadn't had him on yet. Rurik Skywalkers.
I follow that guy on Substack. He was just a couple of weeks ago. I saw him posting that Ukraine is definitely going to win. Like it's a certainty. I thought this guy's a bit wacky.
That doesn't sound true, does it?
That's what people were saying back in 2022 when they were also saying that Putin poos himself and he's gone senile and stuff.
To be fair, though, the Russians have been saying that they're just about to win since 2022 as well. So
yeah, right.
So I've just lost track of what's happening in Ukraine because it's just so boring. They've broken through in Donetsk or something.
One suburb of one city that I never heard of has been taken.
It's just interminable.
Horrible.
All I know is the Rat King is still sitting on the rodent throne. That's all I know. So, all right, and I think that is pretty much it.
There is a comment from Bud Reebok on Twitter. He says, AA, could you please update the playlist on Substack soon with the new ones, the Deepest Law?
Yes. Well, we're just going to have to wait until next week. But yeah, then I'll have to sit down and do it all. I've been annoyingly busy recently.
games tournaments to deal with.
My entire life revolves around trying to get to business as usual and then being thwarted because there's always some bullshit I have to do. Like,
if we had, sorry,
yeah, go on.
Well, if we had someone rich on our side doling out money the way the Soroses and Ellisons do, could we just have like one staff between several of us who can just do a bunch of that stuff, so we can just do the creative stuff? That'd be so amazing. One secretary for like every 2 or 3 creatives or something. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, it would be good, wouldn't it? Rescuant Pulse has come in with a late super chat saying, AA, do you voice the videos or some or all of the videos for your courses? And if so, which ones? Well, the answer to that question is no, not all the courses are mine. I do Foundations of Shakespeare, all the courses on the Trivium. Foundations of Research is me. The economics and the politics ones are me. Entrepreneurship is by my buddy Pharaoh. And the maths and physics ones are by a maths guy and a physics guy, respectively. Because obviously I'm not qualified to teach maths or physics, right? As anybody who knows me knows, right? So, some of the courses are not by me and the other courses are by me. So hopefully that answers your question. But all the ones by me are in a big one called the Mega Bundle. Apart from Shakespeare, the Mega Bundle has all of the ones by me, apart from Shakespeare, which is a new one. So,
aren't you sort of resold by Lotus Eaters as well? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, there are some of the Trivium is on the Lotus Eaters site as well, where we've just got a deal. It's kind of a, I guess you call it a lease or Part X deal or something, where they can also sell those courses, and sometimes I go in and do it. So you can also buy it through them, but then they get half the money. So
okay,
it's better if you buy it off me, obviously. But when I go in to Lotus, because obviously Lotus Eaters have tons of people who watch them who don't watch me, right? So,
and there's currently a discount code you can use as well, isn't there?
Promo code Shredder. That's right. So that's how that works. All right. That'll be that. Yes. Simon, where can people find you, sir?
I'm on Twitter at Simon__Roberts, and I'm going to encourage you all this week to drop into the exhibition run by the Art Bros. That's Alexander Adams, Ferro, Fendervilliers, and Art Dino, my friends, down in London at 11 Caledonian Road, N1, near King's Cross Station. It's the Power and Intimacy exhibition, which runs until the 12th of October. No tickets needed. If you're in London, go along and consider some fresh art from the lads in our theme.
Well, that reminds me, Simon. After I end this call, I'm going to add you back in. I'm going to add you two back in for a little post chat.
Yes.
Reminded or something.
Yes.
Horace, where can people find you, sir?
If people want to follow me on Twitter at Infinite Horus, I've got a YouTube channel that I was banned from, and I've got it back, and I'm going to do a stream in the next few days. So I'll post about it on Twitter. It's going to be about the Anti-Nazi Council, also known as the Focus, and the sort of lobbying efforts for war before the Second World War in Britain in the 1930s, especially centering on Churchill and the Focus, the infamous Focus that David Irving's written about. So I'm going to be talking about that. So I'll post about that on Twitter at Infinite Horus.
All right, fantastic. See you all again soon. I may make a video later today. May not. It depends on how I feel. What do you think about making that Tommy video? Too much? Or?
No, I think you should actually. I think it's an interesting inflection point where you've got this riving and subversion within a certain sphere. I mean, the flag subversion. I noticed that little thing going down. Was it Hastings?
Sussex.
Sussex, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Hastings,
yeah. It was just an interesting moment there of a bit of striving to and fro among different groups, and I think that's always an interesting point of sensitivity to look at.
Did you just say you're back on YouTube for us?
Yeah, I had a channel. It was banned 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago, and I applied to get it back, and they did give me it back.
Well, that's marvelous news. Marvelous, simply marvelous. I'm always happy when our lads get things go their way. I'm always happy.
I better use it, hadn't I?
Yeah. I mean,
And I will get banned again.
Boris, the game has changed so much, mate, in 5 years. You've got to be consistent. It's all about fucking thumbnails and slot titles, but I'll talk you through it later.
Yeah.
All
Return
right.
with a V. Yeah.
All right. Let me and give me the link, and I'll stick it in the show notes so people can find you. All right. I'll end the stream. Everybody get out. I'll see you. I may have that Tommy video up later. Watch this space. I'm thinking about it. And you two, if you just stick around, the gaffer wants to have a word.
Yeah. Thanks to the chat for tuning in.
What goes on in this town is none of your business.
As long as I'm living here, it is.
Then maybe you shouldn't be living here!
Well, that's easily fixed.